thank you so much. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tempe City Council work study session for Thursday, December 3rd. The time is now 5:21. We apologize for being a little bit late. We were finishing an executive session up in a different room. Due to concerns over COVID-19 exposure, the city's implemented measures to protect our community, including the closing of council chambers and limiting public attendance to electronic means only. Members of the public may view the live meeting proceedings on Tempe Channel 11 or attend the meeting virtually through Cisco WebEx events by visiting tempe.gov/clerk for more information. First up, item number 1, call to the audience. The City Council welcomes public comment at this time for items listed under Section 2, Issue Review Session, and Sections 4A and B, Committee of the Whole items on this work study session agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Mr. Mayor, we do have speakers for items 2D, and I believe that's it on this work study session.
Got it.
Oh,
okay.
4A2 in the next section as well.
So 2D and 4A2. Got it. Okay. We will just go ahead and take these items in order then. Let's see, actually. Let's actually take the public comment first, just to make sure. So let's do the speakers for item 2D, Madam Clerk.
2D, I have a speaker card submitted for Andrew Myers in person, but he also submitted one to read, so I'm not sure if he's here or not.
Okay, thank you. Is Mr. Myers present? If not, we can go ahead and just read the statement.
Mr. Mayor, I do not see a Myers listed in the attendees list currently.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Then, Madam Clerk, would you go ahead and read the statement he submitted in writing?
Certainly. Andrew Myers of Camp Verde, Arizona, Copper State Farms writes, I wish to advocate for the increase of the allowable square footage for a marijuana cultivation facility within city boundaries from 25,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet. Larger cultivation facilities do not present a greater challenge from a regulatory or law enforcement perspective. Copper State wishes to add more good-paying jobs to support the Tempe economy, but requires this minor change to the zoning requirements to make it possible. And he writes, please accept this comment past the 2-hour deadline, so I did. And that's how he closed.
Great, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any other comment cards in item 2D?
That was it for this item. Both cards were from Andrew.
Okay, great, thank you so much. All right, next up then we have a comment cards for item number 4A2, which would be Tempe funding.
Mayor, I do have one more for 2D. It was just out of order here on my list.
Yes.
I'll read that one quickly. It's from Janice Barton, and she writes, I live in San Jose, California. Recreational cannabis has been for several years now. There are several cities that will only allow cannabis delivery. I think in a college town, this is a good option to adopt. There are fewer impaired drivers, and with the pandemic, delivery is the safest option. Half of the taxes, more than 10%, go directly to the police department for enforcement of illegal cannabis distribution. I believe legalization has negatively impacted the drug cartels. Hope my input has helped. Thank you. So that's it.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, and let's go ahead too with item 4A2 with any public comments on that.
4A2, we have 2 speakers, Victor Arenal.
Okay, is Mr. Arenal present?
Yes, he is, Your Honor.
Hi, Victor, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. Should I go ahead? This is the first time I've been on this particular network, so do I just start?
Yes, go for it. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Victor Arenal, and I've been a Tempe resident in the same house, actually, for 48 years. And I was a GED teacher for many years in the Mesa Public Schools, and I would talk to my students about why they didn't finish high school. And among all of the students that I talked to over the years, not one of them ever said that they were in any kind of a preschool. So when I saw this item on the agenda, I thought, well, I ought to check into this a little bit. And I studied a number of longitudinal studies investigating the short and long-range effects of participation in preschools. For example, Reynolds' study of a cohort that was born in 1980 and was followed for 28 years. And almost every longitudinal study has compared participants in full-time institutional preschool, that is not a home setting or group setting in a private home, where they go 4 to 7 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. And all of the studies have consistently reached the following conclusions. With regard to educational attainment, there are higher educational attainments for preschool in grades 5 to 6. There's a convergence of educational attainment in grades 7 to 9, but along the way, there's a lower dropout rate and a need for remedial services for students who have come from preschools. There's higher rates of education, higher rates of higher education admissions, retention, and completion of a degree. And with regard to socialization, there has been lifetime lower rates of serious crime and incarceration, significantly lower rates of drug abuse, higher rates of health insurance, placement in jobs that required higher skills and earned higher income, and greater involvement in family life and child rearing. I don't think that there's any question that preschool plays a very important role in socialization as well as in academic achievement. And I would urge the council to approve the proposal that's before it. I just might want to add as one final note, everybody talks about return on investment. Most of the studies that I've seen indicate that over the lifetime of a child who's been in preschool, the return on investment is someplace between $8 and $11 per dollar spent in the preschool program. I think that's a pretty good return, and I think that's something the council ought to consider when it discusses this investment that's before the council now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arenell. Really appreciate it. Madam Clerk, our next speaker.
Also, we have a submission from Allison Ewers requesting to speak.
Yes, Ms. Ewers, how are you tonight?
Hi, Mr. President. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Thank you. Go ahead.
I did live in Phoenix for a while in Ahwatukee, and when I decided to move here, I decided to move to the city of Tempe because they're family oriented. We care about the family and we're education focused. I think it's the #1 best investment the city can continue to make. And so I'm here to just talk about it. Brain research has indicated that children between the ages of 3 and 4, that is the growing, most child developmentally strong years. That is, it's imperative that we not waste any of that time and get our kids ready. Preschool is what I call getting the wiggles out. It sets you up for kindergarten success. And I've had the example of my son being in the GETS program as a peer model. And I've seen firsthand students who start out at the beginning of the year and they won't even speak. They're scared to go to class. They don't want to be, they don't even want to be there or be taken from their parents or participate. And within 3 to 4 months, the growth that they make, and by the time they get to the end of the year, they're ready for school. And then I went into kindergarten and I saw the difference immediately of those children who were in pre-K and those who hadn't been. And the success rate already is so vastly different. So I'd like to ask the council to please consider continuing this program. And it does help the most disadvantaged kids that we have, but it also offers experience to our children that they can't get anywhere else. Our public school system offers above none the most well-implemented evidence-based curriculum that we have. So I'd like to ask that you continue to support that.
Great. Thank you so much. And also, Allison, congratulations. Just wanted to say that as well. So, all right. Since we have no other cards, I'm going to go forward here.
I have 2 to read, Mayor.
Oh, you have 2 to read? I thought that was it. All right, go for it.
So the first is from Kayla McCoy of Tempe. She writes, Tempe preschools are important to my family because it is all that we have. Education is important to our family, and being a frontline worker, we have minimal options for childcare. Tempe pre-programs fit our budget, and my child receives valuable learning and playtime that as a single parent, I often struggle to provide. We need this program in our community. And the next one is from Gail Shanks of Tempe. And she writes, Dear City Council members, when the council agreed to fund the initial 2-year pilot program for Tempe Pre, it was a red letter day for our city. Families that fell below the poverty line were able to send their children to great preschools and given a much needed leg up in starting their education. Adding the next 2 years was gravy and much needed, proving how important you felt early access to education is for our children. I know that you're working on permanent funding in a form of a possible sales tax increase for this much needed program, but the timing wasn't right with COVID to add that to our ballots this fall. Until we could vote on the tax increase, I would ask that you sign the contracts for the teachers so that we don't lose them and don't lose the program, nor the momentum that has been accrued over these past 4 years. Your working group recommends that the city proceed with these contracts to protect the investment in infrastructure, program development, and teacher training made by the City of Tempe, Tempe Elementary number 3 School District, early childhood advocates, as well as foundations and philanthropic partners. This is definitely a group effort and one in which we all who live in the community will benefit in the years to come. Gail Shanks, co-owner of Changing Hands Bookstores. And that's it, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Carla. Really appreciate it. With that said, I'm going to move on here to item number 2, issue review session. Item 2A is Indigenous Design Collaborative at Arizona State University. And I'm going to call Braden Kay, the director of our sustainability office, to come give a presentation. Dr. Kay.
Thank you so much, Mayor Woods. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Braden Kay, Office of Sustainability. I'm here tonight to update you on a promising partnership as part of our city's climate action work. One of the things that we're hearing from Tempe residents, including young people in Tempe, is they want our climate work to address racial equity and inclusion. A critical aspect of equitable and inclusive climate action is the ability to incorporate Indigenous perspectives into the work of creating a more sustainable and resilient city. We've been fortunate to start working with Wanda De La Costa at Arizona State University and her Indigenous Design Collaborative. First, we applied with Wanda on a National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town grant. And tonight, Wanda is going to share with us that proposal, and we'll find out if that's funded this coming spring. We also recently got funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for the Cool Kids, Cool Places, Cool Futures grant. I'm going to come back to you to talk about that full proposal, but in this grant, Wanda and her team at the IDC are going to support our young leaders that are part of this grant program in learning how to incorporate Indigenous knowledge into city building and the importance of honoring tribal leaders and Indigenous knowledge as we live on Indigenous land. So Wanda's here tonight to share with her the work that she's already been doing with Arizona State University and in our region. And we're just really lucky to be able to work with such an inspiring and forward-thinking leader. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Wanda. You can take it from here.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. Like as was mentioned, my name is Wanda De La Costa. I am a member of the Satellite Cree Nation in Northern Alberta, Canada. I am jointly appointed between Construction and Design School. And I founded the Indigenous Design Collaborative at ASU because I felt that architects in training and planners in training need methods to be able to work with our diverse population. I understand that we are going to be a majority minority by 2045. And I think this is an important part of our teaching at ASU is how to work with diverse publics. So today what I wanted to go through, and I'll go through quite quickly, I welcome questions if there are any, is really about our IDC. I'll show you a few projects, some of the work that we do. I will also share with you how we publicize our work and how we communicate the process of what we do. Then I want to share with you these wonderful Te Aranga principles that the City of Auckland in New Zealand is instituted based on Maori worldview and philosophies, and how we're integrating all of this together into a grant proposal for our town. So a little bit about the IDC. It was established in 2016. And we use a number of methods that I learned. I'm more of a professor of practice. I've been practicing for 20 or 25 years. I still have a firm that I do an occasional project with, but we use the process that I've learned in the last 20 years, and I created it. It's called the Indigenous Placekeeping Framework, that enables us to weave together local narrative and histories toward visions of the future. This is the simplified process that we work through. Everything about our work is community-led. They design the process and tell us the pathways, help us co-design the pathways to get there. It's very process-based, so it's less about that shiny object at the end. It's more about how we get there. It's very place-based, so taking the assets and anything that we can find within the local context and using that as our inspiration. And finally, we always lead with reciprocity. What is the value to the local communities? I tell my students, if we can't find a value, if we can't articulate a value, we should rethink what we're doing. So in terms of projects, I brought a few to share. There are some recent ones, and I thought they would be relevant to Tempe. I know you do a lot of work in Tempe with artists, and we do as well. This is one of those projects where we did it on ASU's new library, Hayden Library. We wanted to do something kind of hip and cool, and we brought in 3 Indigenous artists who are quite well known in our Indigenous circles to help us create a font for graffiti, to create this language greeting wall that says hello and welcome in all of the Indigenous languages in Arizona. Similarly, in Arizona, or in Hayden Library, we're working in conjunction with the Salt River Pima Maricopa artist, Jeffrey, who's amazing. He does a lot of metal work, but he's taking those patterns from traditional pottery, and we're incorporating them in contemporary furniture for interiors. So very meaningful design. The third project I brought to share, this is something that we work hard at, is reimagining traditional form. This is based on the Hogan, and it's a gathering facility that we work on. Another one of our largest projects that we just finished is for the Colorado River Tribe. And imagine that this is done supervised by 2 faculty members at IDC, myself and Claudio Vetzstein, an award-winning architect. And it is designed by a number of ASU students. So for them to be able to work on these large projects, I think is pretty exciting to them. So we're building quite a lot of interesting projects. This is probably our most long-running project. We've been working with the Gila River Indian Community for the last 4 years. We built those shade structures that you see on the lower part left of the screen. It was in order for us to understand what is important in terms of their traditional architecture, so we know how to incorporate that into a house. We're going to be designing and building the most sustainable home on a reservation in the USA this year and next year. And again, you see the picture on the lower right-hand side. Our process is really about listening. I tell my students we should be talking for only 5% and listening for 95% of this work. We have a lot to learn. So in terms of how we bring these ideas into the world, we think it's important. We've started working in video media as well, but the first intuition was for us to produce a series of what I call idea books, and we're hoping for the city of Tempe, for the work that we're doing, that we've initiated, that will start creating one of these idea books. This one was about indigenizing ASU's campus. So President Crow has got a hold of this. Every once in a while, he gets a bit of spare cash. He calls us up and asks us to join him in bringing that welcoming notion, inclusionary notions to our campus. We see above a timeline. We're very graphic in trying to articulate how we do what we do. On the lower part of the screen is our process. We connect to a lot of the archives, and this are the project pages that we included in the book that goes through all of the different 22 nations in Arizona. We are learning, as I mentioned, and so we study, before we go into community, we study history, lifeways, material culture, traditional architecture, anything that we can find out before we enter community. We scope everything in nationally and globally that's going on with Indigenous design. We're finding some really cool things are coming out of New Zealand and Australia. We have a lot of collaborators that we work with down south. But for instance, this is an international Indigenous design charter, basically a roadmap for how to do good work with Indigenous communities. And then finally, after we do all of that research gathering and understanding, talking with communities, doing this co-design process, engagement process, we come up and ideate. We bring our students to ideate. So I'll just share with you the two bottom ones. One of them was a ceremonial arbor for the campus, so people can rest and pause. I think this could be useful anywhere in the city, including in the city of Tempe, to have people reconnect. There's recognition of all 22 tribes in this design. And then we have very futuristic ideas, which I think are part of something that we work toward, is this notion of futurity. And one of our Indigenous designers came up with an underground agricultural center to grow plants year-round in Phoenix. Really cool ideas. The second book we're working on, and I thought this might be also relevant to the city of Tempe, it was for McDowell Quarter. Everyone knows this location is Miracle Mile, one of the most glamorous streets in Phoenix back in the 50s. Well, we went in there and we thought, okay, let's do our typical process. We went to study the history, but when we started studying, we found out some very interesting assets in that community. Not only is there a tremendous entrepreneurial spirit with a lot of the community members, but we found that zip code is 66% Latinx. So of course we felt a little bit out of our element. We ended up, in order to combat the fact that we're mostly Indigenous and we're working in a Latinx neighborhood, we brought in a Latinx co-pilot to help us navigate and curate and manage the study. We went out deep into community. This is our specialty. We love going out. We have very specific processes that we follow, very specific exercises that we normally use in Indigenous communities, but we brought them here to a predominantly Latinx community, and we had a lot of fun, and they seem to work quite well to be able to drill down into value systems, aspirations, and so forth. Adding to that layer of the community engagement, we often do interviews with community members. So this is an interview with one of their long-standing residents to really understand what are the issues from the people who have been holding this place for many generations. And then in addition to all of that sort of grounded work, we start to study from an academic lens, of course, many theories. These are theories related to creativity and well-being. And the students drill through these and try and find ones that are applicable based on the narratives that we have heard. And then finally, just like the other book, at the very end of our study, then we start to ideate. And so the students produce these sort of visualization images that help people imagine how we can bring culture and diversity into city making. So the last couple of sections that I've got to share with you, I'm going to go through the Auckland Design Manual. This has really been a life-changing discovery for me when I found out that there was a city in the world that was bringing the Indigenous notions, worldview, and Indigenous ways of being, doing, and connecting. I was really, really transfixed with this. And it's the city of Auckland. They're doing a phenomenal initiative. It's the only one in the world. But basically, you can see here the process. They convened people in 2006, and they created a strategy, which is now implemented in the city policy. The reason why they did it, they realized that Maori people were absent from city planning processes, and they tried to change that with the creation of these principles. I share with you on the right-hand side one of the examples of the projects that emerged from this work. There are 3 projects total. But what I wanted to point out is really what are the objectives? And I think that first bullet point here on the left is something that really we can all stand behind. Is we're in this beautiful place in Tempe and in Phoenix with this glorious weather. We have a tremendous abundance of ability to be outside and enjoy the natural landscape and built environment. And that is, I think, one of the openings that Te Ananda creates. It's for all of our appreciation, not just Indigenous people, but at the same time, the second bullet point, it's really about reinstatement and development and articulation of Maori knowledge and understanding. And then finally, it's really about guiding culturally appropriate design processes and responses. The second project you see on the right, this was about hospitality. And I think this is a really important, the value systems that are the basis of those principles, and which is what we would love to get to in the grants that we're working with Braden on. You see on the left the core values that came out of this. To me, I think a lot of these are quite universal. I think I might be biased, but it's about, you know, a relationship with the natural world and human beings. The second one, holistic hospitality. The third one, that spiritual connection with people and our environment, you know, and so on and so forth. It's just really beautiful, holistic concepts that I think most cities would benefit connecting to these type of principles. The last project I brought in the Te Aranga to show the Te Aranga, it's called Te Oro, which is a music and arts center done in the city of Auckland. And I'll go through, there's 2 pages on this. I thought it was a really good example to show what these type of principles could bring to the city of Tempe. You see the building on the far left hand. They connected that building to the trees, which is something as a significant landmark for the local Maori people. The middle column is about naming. They do a lot of naming in this system, and they named this center after, what is it? The sound of the wind blowing across the leaves. Really beautiful. Just a reminder of where we are in this place. On the right-hand column, you see the artist installation around this building. There are 6 artist installations, of course, very connected to the environment and our animal world. On the far left column, the programming, there's a lot of spaces that are designed to accommodate more cultural activities, which I think are important here. It's jewelry making and painting. You can imagine, you know, an arts market connected to this, and maybe an incubator space connected to this for the city of Tempe. And then the features in the middle column, I think there's some really beautiful things in here, you know, beyond the naming. They're changing fonts, branding, they're creating signage and wayfinding in the city. They're bringing traditional wall patterning to areas in the city, which you see in the image below. And they're bringing different symbols and figures that have meaning to their culture. The last column there, you see an artwork woven by local weavers that they're incorporating into built form. So the last part of this presentation is regarding the Our Town proposal. So we submitted, it's called the Re-Indigenization of Tempe, Designing for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The section of the grant that we applied for is called Cultural Planning, which is really leveraging a community's cultural resources and decision-making. And our specific proposal was aimed at leveraging local arts and cultural ecosystems to create Indigenous design principles and a series of accompanying design ideations toward reimagining. It is going to be co-led by Indigenous creatives. As you've seen through these presentations, we're connected to a lot of artists that we work very closely with. So this would be in collaboration with local artists, culture bearers, ASU design students, and through, of course, engagement with neighboring communities. We love collaborating, so I can see also deep collaborations with many of the departments within the city of Tempe. So this is a diagram showing the sort of overall structure. There's the city of Tempe. These were the preliminary departments that we had included in our grant. The lower end are the 3 communities that we wanted to work with an artist from each of those communities, and we have those artists ready to roll. And then, of course, the Indigenous Design Collaborative. The 3 aims of that grant: building connections, so not only helping the city of Tempe build connections to the local communities, but also to the artists who act as ambassadors and champions for those local communities. Secondly, to elevate cultural identity. And finally, to reimagine place and thinking about what does the future bring, you know, in light of this shift of thinking that we're all in right now. I think it's an opportunity with COVID to really reimagine what our environment is, how we change it to be more reflective of our priorities at this time. And finally, the last slide here is really just a timeline. We are hoping we will get notified in April of 2021 and start performing the award in July of next year. bringing on a number of artists and students, working through a process of co-design over 2021 and 2022, and then ending up in our final product being a public book release and an arts engagement that would showcase the local designs. In the middle of that, of course, we would have multiple opportunities and check-in points and be collaborating very closely with many of your departments. So that's what I brought to share today. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Hi.
Thank you so much, Wanda. Really appreciate it. Great presentation. I'm going to go ahead and turn to the council here. Anyone, comments, questions? Let's see, Councilor Kuby.
Well, thank you so much, Wanda. And I'm a colleague of yours at the Global Institute of Sustainability and appreciate so much your involvement with the School of Sustainability and all the wonderful students we have. And I'm just thrilled to see what's happening at the university with an embracing of Indigenous knowledge and placemaking and community-centered solutions. And I'm just delighted at all the outlines of this project and cannot wait to see what comes from it. And I hope for a long and continued partnership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Councilmember Kuby. Any other members of council, comments, questions?
Hi, this is Councilmember Garland.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was wonderful, and I'm really excited about the possibilities of partnerships in the future. I absolutely love the idea of incorporating Indigenous culture and art to the city of Tempe, kind of honoring the first people who were here. I love the idea of studying the buildings and the homes at the SRPMIC. I mean, it's interesting. I think I talked about this before, but you learn from the people who've been here forever before air conditioning and understand why they have shades on certain area and why they grow their vegetables in a certain way. There's so many things that you can learn about sustainability and our area just by studying that. And I'm just absolutely impressed with what you do. So thank you very much for presenting tonight.
Thank you, Doreen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Garland. Any other council members, comments, questions? Not like Wanda, I was going to say the same thing. Thank you for the amazing presentation and for all of your hard work and just looking forward to a continued partnership. This is excellent. I mean, I honestly can't say anything more than how excited I am that we're talking about this evening. And and to echo Councilmember Garland's comments, I'm so happy we're going to be incorporating the work and the history of Indigenous people in what we continue to do collectively. So I'm very excited about that and just want to thank you sincerely for your work.
Thank you.
Council, any further comments, questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much once again, Wanda. Thank you very much, Braden. Really appreciate it.
Mayor,
oh, sorry, I'm just looking for hands here. So, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, I'm sorry. I couldn't find the buttons. So anyway, I just want to thank you for your wonderful presentation, and I too look forward to working with you in the future. And just thanks for taking the time to present this to us tonight so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. I think I heard Councilmember Navarro.
Oh, thanks, Mayor. No, I think it was a wonderful presentation, and I do appreciate the coordination we're working with, and thank you so much for the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other council members, comments, questions? Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you again, Wanda. Really appreciate it. Also, thank you, Dr. K.
Thanks, man.
All right. Next up here, we have item 2B, Clark Park improvements and an aquatic facility. I'm going to call upon Sean Wagner, our Deputy Community Services Director, to give a presentation.
Mayor, Council, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity tonight to come and just talk with you about our progress on the Clark Park improvements and aquatic facility. And so tonight we're just going to be seeking some council feedback on those concept plans that have been developed over the 2 public comment periods. that we have currently engaged in. As you'll see, we really identify with the quality of life performance measures, and with those, the 3.16, 3.17 quality of recreation centers and their subsequent programs. Just as a brief background, we have selected Dig Studio, and they lead a dynamic team with Holly Street and Aqua Design in an effort to look at both the park amenities as well as the new aquatic facility design. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon Skobiak, and he is the lead from Dig Studio. Brandon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss Clark Park. So where we are currently in the project, we have just wrapped up a second kind of round of community outreach. The first round was held back in September and really focused on listening and getting as much information about the community, how they use the park, and their visions and aspirations for the aquatic facility and any future park improvements. Since then, we've been meeting with various stakeholder groups, including Braden's group, the Sustainability Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, and then followed up again just a few weeks ago with a second round of community outreach. Next slide. So to summarize the first kind of phase of community outreach really quickly, like Sean was mentioning, the park kind of has three facets, or the project has three facets to it. One is looking at the overall park in terms of what may come of the park in the future, new amenities, how the aquatic facility stitches into the existing fabric of the park. So we asked the community really, how do you use the park today? What are those top priorities? And really what came back was just the idea that there is green space there, that it is this breathable room that the community has, that they like to just walk and stroll through the park. It does have these amazing, a good variety of amenities, the condition of which varies depending on the amenity, but there's a lot to do there. And there was an obvious love of the garden. There was a lot of passion and investment that has been in that garden in the last few years, and that really showed through community outreach. Next slide. And so the second part of the outreach and second part of the project is an expansion of the rec center that exists on site. So there's currently a rec center. Part of the funding for this project is to expand the footprint and the impact of that rec center. And some of the key takeaways and activities, one, not a whole lot of the participants had used the rec center previously. However, there was a lot of excitement within the narratives, the written responses about what expanding this community space could provide to the community in terms of a place to have lectures, a place to have events, a place to gather as a community. Next slide. And finally, there's this kind of facet of the actual aquatic facility. What types of amenities, what types of uses, programs would the community like to see here? And what was reflected within that first round of outreach is really that this needs to be a diverse kind of aquatic facility. There's a diverse neighborhood from seniors to families with young children, and that it's really this recreation, family-focused kind of environment that allows people to spend the day with the family, but then also exercise and lap swim. So with all of that information, that became the basis of design for both looking at the park master plan and then also looking at the program and the arrangement of the aquatic facility. Next slide. So you'll see, so what we had done it as a design team and with city staff is we worked through multiple design alternatives and ultimately came up with two design alternatives for the park master plan. You'll see some similarities with them. Part of that is in response to the community outreach and in highlighting certain items that, in a way made sense, like moving the play, which is indicated by the purple bubbles on the screen, to off of the alley to a much safer location with higher visibility and better foot traffic, improving circulation throughout the entire site, moving some of the sport courts that take up valuable real estate along the Roosevelt edge over to the west side to activate that portion of the park, that existing restroom facility, which will be improved or perhaps be replaced in whole. But the main difference between them is how we handled the garden and how the aquatic facility integrated into the park. In the community hub, Again, in response to that passion that we saw behind the garden, we said, let the garden just kind of remain as is. It's working. It's a place that is definitely loved. And how can we create this relationship between the aquatic facility and the garden to really create this community hub where you have all this activity happening in the south east corner of the site that creates a wonderful kind of park anchor and entrance into the facility. And then to the north, this grand meadow that can be, a host for community events and those types of things. One thing to note in both of these options, the existing recreation center and the existing pool house are both demolished and replaced with a new forward-looking and sustainable structure that would be a combination pool house and recreation facility. Both within our internal assessments and then the city of Tempe's assessments on those two buildings, the conditions were very poor with ongoing maintenance and operations costs. We have felt that at this time that it's more appropriate to eliminate those issues going forward and invest the dollars within this project into a new sustainable building that is much more flexible moving into the future. And then moving over to the Great Lawn, this one moves that aquatic facility back into its kind of quote unquote historic location where it used to live. And then the garden would actually find a new home up into the north east portion of the park. It has a nice adjacency to the alley for kind of maintenance access and that type of thing, as well as having a relationship to Roosevelt and parking. You kind of create this dual anchor with a nice community event lawn that stitches them together. Next slide. So those were the two kind of bigger picture master plan options that we got feedback from the public. We then went through 3 different alternatives for the aquatic facility design. And again, based on that community outreach, what we did to establish a framework in our thinking was take those highest demand things and make those a baseline. So no matter what, each option allows a place for exercise and has lap swimming, allows ample kind of picnic and hangout area for those family activities around the pool, incorporates a beach entry that engages everybody from young tots to grade schoolers with water play, and then has just general swim areas. So from that, the question that was asked of the community was, how can we further tailor this facility and the program of this facility to your needs? And so that's where we came up with the 3 options that you'll see. The first is the family retreat, a little bit more organic in shape and softer in shape, but features a separate on-deck splash pad that's separate from the pool. And what this does, it allows, which is highlighted in H where the hand is, this allows greater interaction with even younger children, those 0 to 3-year-olds, and just having a separate breakout space for them to interact with water. Next slide. Health and wellness. This was built on, again, that passion of the garden. The idea of health and wellness is kind of something that is a value of the neighborhood. We found out through outreach, and bringing in that idea of a therapeutic pool, a separate pool that can be heated to different temperatures and expand the kind of the offering of not only this facility, but Tempe Aquatics on a whole, and having a warm water pool and allowing therapeutic activity to happen. It would still have those family-friendly areas and that lap swimming, but it would just kind of further tailor towards the health and wellness theme. Next slide. And finally, we looked at the idea of a destination. The water slide was always top of the list on items that the community would love to see. It draws people in to the site. It becomes this kind of icon and marker, and it also engages a little bit higher level or older level of children from that middle school to early high school, which can be a benefit to the community as well. Next slide. So we basically have kind of digested the feedback from the online survey and what we heard in the meetings. General sense is very positive along all the options that have been shown, with the community hub as that preferred concept, just in response to keeping the garden and maintaining that investment that's already occurred, with people liking the idea of relocating the sport course to create more of a zone for that. Next slide. In terms,
quick thing, Brad, I just want to make sure. I see Councilmember Adams' hand. Do you have a question now? Do you want to wait till the end of the presentation?
And thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Perfect. And then, so on the aquatic side, what was interesting is the structured form was the more preferred, whether not necessarily responding to a program, but just the form and shape of the aquatic facility. And that was in direct response to just the organization of the program and being able to kind of separate the lap swimmers from the families from some of the other uses that we were looking at. So that will be kind of a guiding factor going forward. It's interesting when we asked, out of the different options shown, what are those extra aquatic features that you'd like to see? You can tell we live in the desert. We live in Arizona, when additional shade was number one over any other type of kind of aquatic program. So really making sure that as we go forward, we're understanding that, a lot of the activity happens on the deck. A lot of the activity happens within surrounding the pool and providing a very comfortable environment for that to happen. Next slide. So where we're going from here is we'd love to hear your feedback on both the aquatic options, the overall park master plan, because we will be developing and consolidating all this information into a preferred design alternative. We will be advancing through the end of this month into January, and then go back to the public once again, late January, early February, to discuss where we're at, make sure that we heard everything correctly, and gather more feedback, and then have a final master plan report deliverable, around March. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. I'm going to go to Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Brandon, for the excellent presentation. I'm so excited about Clark Park and adding a pool to the community, and I like it that we were able to keep the community garden going or a new area for that, but keep that going. I received a lot of feedback when I was going door to door in that area that the community wanted a pool, so I'm so glad that we're responding to those requests. And I just want to remind everyone that the safety, when kids learn how to swim, it saves lives, and this will be a lifesaver for a lot of kids in the long run by having a place to learn how to swim. And I particularly like the destination design, and just think that's kind of hits it for everybody, and look forward to future feedback from our community. Thank you so much. Excellent design.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Councilmember Cubie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, Councilmember Adams, I really want to thank you, because when you were elected, we really got a big spark in pushing forward this idea and this concept. So I know, like you, we knocked on lots of doors in Clark Park. I did in 2014 and 2018, and there was a sense that there was a promise made that hadn't been fulfilled. And we also know about the history of Clark Park and how so many people learned to swim. So many kids learned to swim in this area. So I think we're doing right by the community. So I want to thank you, Councilmember Adams, for all of your engagement on this. And
thank you, Councilmember Cubie. I appreciate that. Thanks for the support.
And I attended a few of the meetings and just sort of sat back and listened, didn't participate. And there was quite a high level of community engagement. And I want to give real credit to community services and how they brought that all about, because there just seemed to be a lot of people attending, a lot of interest, and a lot of creativity in the expression from our residents. So I'm really pleased to see this moving forward. And this may not be the venue to say, but I would hope that, just talking to staff, that we could look at possibilities for naming rights for the aquatic center, because there may be some potential there to help fund some of the aquatic features, and or even the whole pool itself. And with that, I give back my time if we have time allotted.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Councilmember Navarro.
Here you are. Okay. No, I think, hey, this has been obviously years that we've been doing this and trying to make this thing happen, and the downturn, excuse me, caused us to, kind of make some changes in the short term. But I like the design, like the options you're going to present to the community. I kind of favor the stuff for the family, obviously, and having the variety of activity there at the park. I think there's potential in that. The question that I have, even with the arrangements that are going on there. Is this something that is for the lap swimming? Is that something that is going to be activated on, or do we need to activate it? Maybe is the thought because of McClintock Pool and the 50-meter lanes for tournament type swimming. But if that's not what we're trying to go for, then I kind of like the subtle. We do have some lap swimming, but the majority of it has family activities, whatever they may be. I kind of always boast about the abilities of having other things like a flow rider, which I've seen in Mesa has done very well, and there's only 2 in the state from what I understood from last go around, one at a resort and one at Mesa Roads Junior High, their pool. But I noticed that really does have a draw to activities within the pool area. But something of that sort, I think, is very beneficial if that's an option that can be presented. But I like how you guys are going forward, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro. Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, I mean, this has been something that has been on our radar for a really long time, like Joel said. I mean, we've been talking about this for years. And of course, I'm not surprised that Joel would bring up the Flow Rider, because he's been talking about that for I don't even know how long. And I don't know, Joel, I think maybe we saw you out there in Mesa on that Flow Rider.
Years.
Not a pretty thing, Joel. Just saying. But I do agree, though. I like Councilmember Navarro's thought about the family retreat, really kind of bringing it back to the community. I know that our neighborhoods are kind of cyclical in the sense of when, we have young kids and they get a little bit older, and we got school-age kids and then no kids. And it's kind of really nice to see that cycle back and see a lot more kids in our neighborhood nowadays, and see this really see a benefit for the surrounding just immediate neighborhood. But I know that the survey actually, I think you said that 76% of them were within 3 miles. And I think that I would drive 3 miles to go hang out at a family retreat type location. And, just really to be able to have an experience there is really fun. And I think could be something that really could be beneficial, not only just for the neighbors in that area, but for the community as a whole. So, Sean, to you and your team and everybody that's been working on this, and to all the residents that have participated, and really letting us know what's important to them, I mean, makes all the difference in the world. So I like the idea when you talked about leaving the garden where it's at. I mean, it seems like it's more feasible to put the pool where we can and leave some of the other amenities where they already are. Just cost effectiveness, I think, one of the things that we've got to be at least cognizant of. So again, appreciate the work and look forward to the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Arredondo Savage. I'll just say as well, I like the family retreat alternative of the ones that were presented. So that's my personal preference. Does any, for the same reason that Councilmember Arredondo Savage talked about, I do think that we're, getting new families who are moving into our neighborhoods, and they're frankly looking for things for their, for themselves and for their children to do, to really kind of create that sense of community in a lot of our neighborhoods. I think that's from my perspective, that would be the preferred design. So I really like that concept. With that, I'm going to go to Councilmember Adams.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I would be totally fine with the family retreat also. I think it offers a lot of different options, and a great destination too. So I'm good with that one. If that we have consensus on it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other council members, comments or questions?
Hi, Mayor. This is Councilmember Garland, and I just have to say I like the family retreat also. I like the soft, how you said it was soft lines or soft look up to it. I like that. I have to say I absolutely love that when we got our council packet, that information was put in there that we could actually read the comments. There were pages and pages of comments from people, and I really enjoyed reading those. Some of them were hilarious, but they had lots of information down there. So I really appreciate the hard work you guys have done to not only make sure that we're getting resident participation and really paying attention to their comments, but allowing us to see those also. And, another part of this that I like is I like the idea of, the future of having high school students or college students, working as lifeguards or working at the park, at the pool. I just think that is something really fun to do when you're in high school. And I just like all those other opportunities we have also. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Garland. Anyone else comments or questions?
No, thank you for all the feedback. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I was going to ask, Brandon, do you feel you have enough input to go forward?
Yeah, I think the input has been great. I would second the comment on all the narrative that the community was able to offer. It was really good reading and really got a sense of not only just A or B, but the people that are out there and interested in the setting. Yeah, and from I think it was Joel, your question on the competition pool. I think from the get-go, the focus was to try to understand and right-size the pool for this neighborhood, and it was kind of understood that it would not be kind of this full competition pool, but rather more of a recreation focus. However, it could host, swim lessons and those types of things. We've met with the clubs, and there would be some of that use, but it would not be kind of a full kind of competition facility.
Copy that. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, this is Sean. Truly appreciate your feedback tonight. And again, it just goes in line with obviously your vision and your investment into this area and truly appreciate it. So looking forward to getting back to the drawing board here with Brandon and his team so that we can continue to move this project forward and see it become a reality here, within the next couple of years.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate it. Brandon, thank you as well for the presentation. Excellent work, and looking forward to seeing this come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, next up, Council, we have item 2C. And in the interest of time, I know we're running very, very short. This is the long-term transit fund plan and service changes. I'm going to really just sort of bring up Marilyn DeRosa and Eric Iverson. They've got a couple of sort of pointed questions for council regarding direction. So I think I'm just going to go turn to Eric. And if you want to start, go for it.
Just give me one moment, Mr. Mayor, as I elevate them into panelists. Give me 1 sec.
Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You guys can all hear me, right? Yeah.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that quick intro. I know that in the interest of time and getting through the rest of your meeting and the formal agenda tonight, we are asking, Greg, if you could go to the last slide of this presentation, we will cut to the chase. We have the PowerPoint and the memo, as well as the public comments that are all in your packet. We have Sam Stevenson also here to answer any questions, but we are basically asking for your approval of the service changes that we took through the public process with our partners at Valley Metro this fall. Our team in Valley Metro took through this fall, as well as retiring the idea of revenue generation by charging for orbit. Based upon the public feedback, we feel that we do not want to change the character of the orbit system and keep that really kind of near and dear portion of our transit system as free to the Tempe community. And then finally, in the interest of following up on what the council had requested us look into for possible revenue generation with advertising, we are asking for the council's support tonight to further explore the idea of advertising in our system, get you some good final numbers coming up in 2021 by doing an RFP for transit shelters, working with Phoenix and Valley Metro on that, and then also working with Valley Metro and the rail system and our bus fleet to get some firm numbers for you on possible advertising revenue for Tempe to offset our transit fund expenses. So those three actions are the things that we are asking for tonight. And before I hand it over to you, I just want to say that the commission, the Transportation Commission, did give their support, a motion for supporting these three ideas at the meeting on Tuesday. And then we will be back to you in January of next month to go through our next round of service changes and budget updates on the transit fund. With that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. First of all, Councilmember Navarro.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Eric, yeah, I appreciate the comments. And my wishes would be, I would like to see that information to explore the advertising. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, sounds good. Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, Eric, you guys are rock solid, and I certainly appreciated working with you, being the representative on Valley Metro. I mean, always doing and looking to do what's right for our residents in the city of Tempe, and realizing we're part of a big regional system. But it really does, really make me proud working with you guys, and realizing that you're doing everything that you can to make sure that we are financially sound moving forward. So, I mean, that I'm not a huge advertiser lover, but I do think it is worth the exploration to kind of see what that might look like, and follow suit with Valley Metro, and work hand in hand with them. So again, thank you to you and the rest of the staff for everything that you guys do, and really keeping us moving in Tempe. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Vice Mayor Keating.
Moving in Tempe, and here I thought I was the comedian. Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate you and your staff's work on this. Great presentation, obviously, in support. I do, like Councilmember Navarro, want to explore that advertising option. Whether we go with it or we don't, it's definitely something to take a look at, and maybe it's not as impactful as it needs to be, and we don't need to do it, but it's certainly something that I want to take a look at and consider. So that's my only feedback for that. So thanks again, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Keating. Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to explore the advertising section of it. And Eric, you are such a great star. So thank you for everything you do for our city, and for your passion for transportation.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Councilmember Cubie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Eric Iverson. I know you got all of your smarts from taking a class with my husband, Mike Cubie, in geography. But I wanted to thank you for all the public engagement, and we know Orbit has had a tremendous impact. COVID has had a tremendous impact on ridership, and I think it's so important, and I see that we've done this, but we have to maintain service to areas where low-income people reside, because they often need to have those transit connections, and they're the frontline workers who are getting us through this pandemic. And so thank you for keeping that uppermost in mind. That's very important. And I also am glad that we're not going to be considering a fee for the Orbit. For the Orbit is, people rely on the Orbit to get to their jobs, and for our homeless community, it's a necessity to get to services across the city and get to their transitional housing. Lastly, the advertising, I'm keenly interested in looking at this, and we may find, as I've discussed with the mayor, that perhaps it doesn't bring in that much funding. We just don't know what it's going to be. We need to look at that, and I'm keenly interested in the transit shelter opportunities, because the way we're going, we're not going to be able to add much more shade to our transit shelters. I mean, we have a plan to do 100%, but it's going to be over decades. And if we can shorten that time frame and get more shade to our transit shelters, that's going to encourage ridership. It's going to encourage people to take transit and to drive their car, and to increase possibilities for riding your bike and walking. All of that is interconnected with healthy communities. So I appreciate that we're going to take that step and take a real deep look at advertising and how that might impact the budget. So thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Next up, Councilmember Garland.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say also thank you, Eric, and thank you to the Transportation Commission. Appreciate the work that you guys do, and I am good at moving forward on those 3 options.
Thank you, Councilmember Garland, and I too am good with moving forward with all 3 options. So thank you, Eric, and thank you also to the Transportation Commission. Eric, do you have all the direction you need?
I do. I really appreciate it. And if you guys have any questions, you always know how to reach us, and we will be back in January.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have item number 2D, the Smart and Safe Arizona Act, which is the recreational marijuana initiative, known as Prop 207. I'm going to call upon our city attorney, Judy Bauman.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Judy Bauman here with Ryan LeVake, Deputy Director for Community Development. We are here to provide an overview and propose regulations consistent with what is in place for medical marijuana establishments in Tempe. As you all know, Prop 207 passed with a sizable margin statewide and certainly in Tempe, and we will offer to work with Rosa's team in strategic management and diversity to establish some performance measures. Next slide, please. We are here to provide an overview and seek your direction on appropriate land use regulations. Wanted to let you know that staff is working with the community and the industry, and we have engaged in citywide collaboration efforts to prepare for the recreational marijuana initiative that has come to Tempe. Next slide. Prop 207 authorizes the possession, consumption, purchase, processing, manufacture, and growth of marijuana by individuals that are 21 years of age or older. And it allows a nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary to apply to the Arizona Department of Health Services to become a licensed recreational marijuana dispensary. Smoking does remain illegal in a public place or open space. The city may regulate for health, safety, and zoning, but may not enact a law more restrictive than what applies to medical marijuana or any law that conflicts with Prop 207. Prop 207 also adopts a social equity ownership program. This is at the state level. Tempe can certainly offer to reach out and offer services and assistance to the state through our Office of Strategic Management and Diversity, but we don't necessarily have control over how that program will roll out since it is done at the state level in Arizona. Employers maintain the right to require a drug and alcohol-free workplace. And the state of Arizona will regulate licensing of recreational marijuana establishments as it does for the medical industry currently. State tax of 16% is also established on the sale of marijuana and marijuana products by Prop 207. And with that, I will turn it over to Ryan LeVay. Ryan, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Ryan, let me unmute you. Stand by. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you. It's kind of hard to monitor the slide and unmute yourself. Let's see. So the medical marijuana ordinance establishment looks in Prop 207 establishing certain criteria for licenses. Specifically, those licenses for the marijuana establishments consist of allowing one marijuana establishment for every 10 pharmacies. This is consistent with the medical marijuana dispensary industry for that same ratio. The proposition also allows a dual licensee for lawfully registered dispensaries to also sell marijuana establishments. So you basically have that same ratio and the result of medical marijuana dispensaries that are existing today to also operate a marijuana establishment or sell recreationally. Furthermore, in the proposition, it goes on to read that not more than 2 licenses are permitted for counties that contain no medical marijuana dispensary. The rest of the counties have that 1-to-1 ratio. And then additionally, they've established, as previously mentioned, the social equity ownership program that will issue an additional 26 licenses throughout the state. Hasn't been determined how they will distribute those 26 licenses, but it certainly could be options of including in additional areas that might have higher demand for marijuana establishments or in areas that currently don't have the ability to sell or establish a marijuana location in their county. Now, the Prop 207 affecting zoning regulations and specifically outlines in the proposition that a local jurisdiction may enact reasonable zoning regulations, limit the number of marijuana establishments, or limit the number of marijuana testing facilities, or both. We can prohibit marijuana establishments, marijuana testing facilities, or both, and then regulate the time, place, and manner of these establishments per an adoption of an ordinance. The local jurisdiction may also prohibit or restrict delivery within its jurisdiction. Currently, right now, the proposition is delivery is unlawful until rules are established by the Arizona Department of Health Services. That timeline can be as early as January 2023 is the earliest they can establish those rules and regulations, but potentially as late as January of 2025. So it'll be a couple years before those laws are put in place. I know there was a public comment mentioned about providing delivery only for marijuana establishments, but at this time, we are restricted from providing delivery. Tempe's options for reasonable zoning regulations. So we know we need to establish a base standard for marijuana establishments, marijuana testing facilities, and as well the existing Arizona's industrial hemp program, which currently has an exemption not to be treated as a marijuana dispensary or establishment, but as an agricultural manufacturing facility. And those locations are allowed in industrial areas. So what we're here before tonight and to seek further direction and guidance from you all is to consider our separation requirements for marijuana establishments. What we do know as a minimum baseline that because we can't make marijuana regulations more restrictive than medical marijuana, that our current medical marijuana regulations found in the zoning code are the most restrictive we can apply to marijuana establishments. And I'll go over what those are today. Currently, we have the separation requirements, 5,280 feet for a 1 mile separation requirement from one dispensary to another. Then we have a 1,500 feet separation from childcare facilities, 1,500 feet separation from charter, private or public schools providing elementary or secondary education. And then we have 1,320 feet separation or a 1/4 mile separation from churches, synagogues, temples, or similar church buildings. 1,320 feet from public parks, libraries, or public community buildings, and then a 1/4 mile separation from residential zoning districts or parcels that are devoted to a residential use in any district. My next slide will show you the current map of dispensaries and cultivation facilities within Tempe. We currently have 5 approved and active dispensaries throughout the city. We also have 6 cultivation facilities throughout. 3 of those cultivation facilities are connected or directly associated with a dispensary at the same site and location. We've got 4 dispensaries in the northern Tempe area and 1 in South Tempe on Elliott Road. And if we were to look at the site a little closer and with the separation requirements that exist today for medical marijuana dispensaries, you can see in this yellow area, this is the residential separation requirements, and then we have other separation district requirements. The 1 mile separation is this radius that's shown between the 2 dispensary sites. And you can see there's a small pocket of area in North Tempe that may allow potentially another medical marijuana dispensary, and then a smaller portion over off of 48th Street between Southern and Broadway, a portion of the industrial site that may allow an opportunity for a medical marijuana dispensary. And down in the southern Tempe portion of our city, again showing the separation requirements and the 1 existing dispensary, we have a few parcels of land in an industrial area near the I-10 that could potentially be eligible for medical marijuana dispensary. So last time when we did this mapping exercise, I think it was estimated that we could see about 5 or 6 dispensaries through Tempe, and we currently have 5 right now. 2 of the dispensaries, I'll note, are considered legal nonconforming to our current separation requirements. They were legal at the time the businesses came into place, but nonconforming to our current separation requirements. If you'll note, in the past, we had a limitation established of no more than 2 dispensaries. When we removed that limitation to 2, we also looked at expanding the separation requirements. It created 2 of our existing dispensary locations in a legal nonconformity manner. If we were to look at, for example, of reducing the separation requirements, this is just an example of if those separation requirements were reduced in half, what the area of town would look like in terms of bringing on board additional properties that may be eligible for either medical marijuana dispensaries or recreational marijuana establishments. These gray areas here would show where properties would be meeting those separation requirements. And again, showing in South Tempe, other portions of land showing opening up of separation requirements. All of these areas are either zoned industrial or commercial zoning use. So staff's seeking recommendation and guidance from City Council on whether or not we look at potentially reducing the separation requirements for new marijuana establishments and dispensaries. If we reduce the separation requirements for our marijuana establishments, we also have to reduce the separation requirements for medical marijuana dispensaries. So we have to treat them similarly. And whether or not there's an opportunity to expand, we'll definitely look into restricting uses on city property, parks, and sidewalks. And then we're proposing to look at marijuana testing facilities and allow them in industrial areas with no separation requirement, looking to treat them as they are, which is a testing lab facility for third-party review for the potency of marijuana for those establishments. And when it's accessory to a marijuana establishment, it'll just be an ancillary use to that business. The other recommendations are looking to incorporate current industrial hemp program. And that program will be evaluated with fire and the building safety division. We'll work with medical marijuana business representatives. We've done a reach out to see if they're interested in communicating, discussing any proposed provisions with a new ordinance draft. And then we want to solicit input and dialogue with the Tempe Coalition to reduce underage drinking and drug use. They've been an active participant in the past, and we want to get their early on involvement in this process to know and understand the impacts of drug use with minors. And then finally, look to conduct a survey, draft ordinance to input on Tempe's forum. We've outlined a schedule for you all to know what this timeline looks like. We're on a somewhat aggressive schedule to ensure that we get an adoption for the ordinance in time for the state's initiative. It'll be noted on the very bottom there that by April 5th is the date that existing dispensaries can automatically begin cultivating, processing, production, and manufacture through products through ADHS if they have not yet failed to establish the license process. So we are here today on December 3rd. We're looking to provide a similar presentation to the DRC to get them informed. Opportunity for public outreach and engagement in the month of December. And then a January 6th voluntary meeting with Neighbor Advisory Commission to get their input. And then ultimately we'll start the public hearing process, starting with the DRC on January 12th, City Council meetings for the ordinance adoption on January 28th and 11th. And then I look for any council feedback and direction on this item at this time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Vice Mayor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question and then I have answers for what sort of direction I'd like to see. My question is the marijuana testing facility, is that something required by Prop 207?
They do establish the use and parameters by which the marijuana testing facility is, and it can either be done and conducted by the marijuana establishment, or it can be conducted by a third party, someone who's not associated with a marijuana establishment.
But a city that has dispensaries has to have some sort of facility?
They don't necessarily have to, but it's a component of the business industry for testing potency.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I feel like we could just outsource that to some other city that has one. I don't necessarily think that we need one, but I don't know enough on that issue to strongly feel one way or the other. But as far as your other questions go for seeking direction, I would be okay to look at easing up our our restrictions as far as zoning goes to open it up potentially for a few more. I don't want a lot more. I do want to look at what other cities are doing as far as the density of their dispensaries. I know Tempe is very restrictive, and I think that's actually okay for a city our size. However, I want to make sure that if we do start easing up a little bit, we're not inundated with a bunch of new dispensaries. I don't want to see Tempe become the marijuana capital of the valley by any means. So I think it's going to be tricky to kind of to strike that appropriate balance. You don't ask for this in your presentation, but I do agree with the gentleman who wrote in earlier as far as increasing the amount they're allowed to cultivate under one roof. And mostly for the points you brought up, it doesn't add any additional law enforcement burden. It doesn't. They can do this. They don't necessarily have to add additional space to do this, and it'd be better business for them, which means more tax revenue for the city of Tempe. One other item you mentioned, working with Tempe Coalition, and I absolutely think we should be doing that. I'd also like to see us work with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, because these businesses are not going away, and they're going to be part of our city, and I'd definitely like to get them involved in the business community and get those connections set up so they can be a bigger community partner than they are. A lot of these big companies that generate millions of dollars in revenue are good community partners. You look at like SRP and State Farm, and they give back a lot. And I do feel like the dispensaries have kind of been left out of all that. So if we could kind of get those groups together and see what we can do. I had one more point, but oh yeah, and I just want to point out. So there is a website, and I'll try to dig up the link and send it around as a Rule 7 that kind of showed like the vote totals for this in the city of Tempe, and Prop 207 passed overwhelmingly in Tempe, even in South Tempe, which kind of surprised me. I think Wagoner was the precinct that was most against it, and it passed Wagoner with 57% of the vote. So it's just something important to keep in mind when we start making decisions on this. The popularity of the ordinance or the referendum, and medical marijuana, of course, has passed 2 or 3 times in the state of Arizona. Now recreational has passed as well. So it's not something that's going to go away. So I think we have to do, through your work and through the council's deliberations, come up with a way to strike the right balance that's good for all of our city, because there are, opposing views, and that doesn't necessarily mean that those views are wrong, but we do need to work together to make sure that we do it right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Keating, I can respond to that other public comment regarding the cultivation facilities. City Council recently did pass an ordinance that amended the medical marijuana cultivation facility requirements from the 25,000 square foot limitation to no limitation on the size of a cultivation facility. We would look to incorporate that same provision for the marijuana establishments as well, and as they cultivate marijuana.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Keating. Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Ryan, I appreciate the information you're bringing this to us. I mean, I think most people know pretty much where I stand and how I feel about the issue. So I'm just kind of going to go through the staff recommendations and give you back my 2 cents. Right now at this time, Ryan, I am not supportive in reducing separation standards right now. I get it and I understand, supply and demand, but I'd like to kind of see how that plays out a little bit and see how things shake out, around the cities that surround us. I'm very cognizant to the fact that we do have a lot of college kids here in the city of Tempe, and I'd like to just kind of see how things, lay low first for a little bit, see how things kind of pan out, and then, make changes later as we want, maybe adjust as needed. I don't know, is there a reason that we couldn't do that in the future, Ryan?
No, not necessarily. Like what we've done originally, I think we took initial approach with the medical marijuana ordinance to be a more restrictive ordinance, and then over time we looked at relaxing some of the standards provisions in there. We had more restrictive times, and that was relaxed. Age limits, things of that nature. I will note we did receive some information from other cities and what they're proposing to do, but I don't think they've yet officially adopted any changes. I believe this towns of, if I can, Judy, are we able to provide the information of what other cities are doing at this time, or is this?
Sure, I think that would be fine. To the extent that we know what they're considering, we can certainly provide that information.
Okay, yeah, so these are potential considerations that Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler, and the city of Scottsdale are considering to limit recreational marijuana to only the dual licensees. And city of Mesa is planning to draft their ordinance for action in December. And so they'll be coming forward pretty quickly. So most of the towns around us, with the exception of Phoenix, we're not sure what direction they're going with at this time, but Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler, and Scottsdale are considering a dual license only, which basically would allow any existing dispensary to also have a marijuana establishment, but no more than that.
Okay, cool. I mean, I think that's helpful, and those are just suggestions of things that they're considering, right? And nobody's really implemented anything at this time.
Not yet. Correct.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and I kind of feel like, you know, I always think it's great to explore things, but I think with the city our size and where we're at, I'm very comfortable with our current codes and regulations. So I don't support adjusting that at this time, but certainly would look at it in the future. Secondly, I do agree that we need to talk about the use of city property, parks, and sidewalks. I think that's really important. I'm not really sure I completely understand the marijuana testing facility, so I'm gonna entrust that you know, you will make some good recommendations in regard to that. I know the vice mayor asked some questions, but it sounds like they're already in place, if I got that right, and will be affiliates with the facilities that may already be in the city. Is that correct? An affiliate building or structure?
There are testing facilities as it relates to medical marijuana. The provisions in the Prop 207 also refer to marijuana testing facilities for marijuana establishments that do bring into play some additional third-party businesses that may not be directly associated with the marijuana establishment or dispensary.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
So they
I
would
don't know
just
if there's
be product testing only.
Understood. Yeah, I don't know if I really have a strong thought on that. I don't know if that's going to be a necessary thing, or you know what that's going to look like. I guess we'll probably learn more as things kind of unfold. But I do agree with the vice mayor in regards to working with the medical marijuana, you know, business representatives. I mean, all the different you know, dispensaries when it comes to their businesses, and really I think including them in a lot of the different conversations. I think that's really important. And I would like to actually take, when we talk about input and dialogue with the Tempe Coalition to reduce, who, you know, works to reduce underage drinking and drug use, to actually try to find a way, if there is a way, to make sure that they do have some substantial funding for the future, something that really ensures that they are able to continue to function with their mission and really work with the youth in our community to ensure that they are on a good path and they are well educated and making good choices as they grow up, because they do really great work. But I do know funding is always a challenge for them. And I think now that recreational marijuana is here to stay, it would be really great to have a partner that we know is here to stay also, to make sure that that education is continuing too. So that's my 2 cents, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arredondo Savage. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mary. No, I absolutely agree with Councilmember Arredondo Savage and Keating. More so on the likes of, I like how we are, because in the past I know that when this medical marijuana came out, we were restricted, but I think it played in our advantage, and I like to stay that way and see how this thing plays out and how it goes. But yes, definitely working with the chamber, working with the marijuana distributors, give backs, Tempe Coalition, all that has been said. I think that's absolutely perfect, and I'd like to go forward with that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro. Councilmember Cubie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the previous statements from the other council members, especially Vice Mayor Keating. And I'm really glad to hear that we don't limit foundation size, because that's just a job and revenue creator, and it doesn't make sense since it's a non-public space. So I'm glad to hear about that. And it does seem that the industry does want to be more mainstream, and I think that's a good thing for our community. And that with Local First and Chamber of Commerce, there's a lot of opportunities to engage with the business community and welcome them into the business community. And I also, from conversations I've had, I know that they are very supportive of mitigation efforts and would welcome working with the coalition. I think they want to be active and conscientious in the way they work with the community. So it's a new era, and we had overwhelming support in our city. I am a little bit concerned about some of the other cities and their attempts to restrict what was popularly passed statewide. And you know, we kind of watch all of that with interest, because I certainly wouldn't want to restrict it more, as you advise, as staff advise. But you know, there might be a possibility for maybe 1 or 2 more. I think total dispensaries are expected to be about 30 across the state. So 5 or 6, that seems about right. But we'll see as time goes on. So thank you so much for all your work on this, Brian.
Thank you.
And Judy.
Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Any other council members, comments, questions?
Hi, Mayor. This is Councilmember Garland. I'll just kind of go down the number list on staff recommendations. Number one, I'm not really comfortable with reducing the separation standards right now. Number two, I do think we need to restrict on city property, parks, and sidewalks. Number three, I'm still kind of wishy-washy on what that specifically that is and how that works. So we could circle back to number three. There's no number four. Number five.
You got me.
Number five, I'm not exactly sure what that one is either. I just put a question mark. Number 6, 7, and 8, I'm a yes with. Could you just, I'm sorry, I know that you've already explained this before, but could you do the number 3, the testing again, marijuana testing facility?
Yeah, and we can certainly come back and bring more information to the city council on this, but the marijuana testing facilities is specifically for setting up the ability for establishing a laboratory facility, a lab that tests the potency and effectiveness of certain brands of marijuana. So, you know, as they get more and more regulations on the types of products that are sold, they certainly want to limit and monitor potency as it relates to whether it's applied to infused into food, into gummy bears, or whether it's just the product itself. Arizona Department of Health Services will be actively involved in monitoring some of those elements, but the testing facilities gives them the ability to have the product there, but for the purpose of testing the potency. So a marijuana testing facility that's just a third party, they don't grow the product and they do not sell the product. Marijuana establishments are the only ones that are allowed to sell the product, but a marijuana establishment could be allowed to have a testing facility on the same site and location of the establishment.
Okay, I understand that better. Thank you very much. For me, I would say that if it's a third party, just a testing facility, I would say that I would be comfortable with that, but I'm not sure if I would want to add any more facilities, other ones here. And then number 5, the industrial hemp program. You said evaluate that with fire department and building safety. What specifically is that one?
Yeah, so the industrial hemp program has been in operation for about a year and a half now. It's something established by the state in Arizona that allows to grow hemp, which is not cannabis, but it looks exactly like the product, but allows to grow it and use it for other purposes that is not specifically designed to provide a product of smoking or digestion. So what we wanted to work with was still continue to work with fire and building safety. Fire had brought up that we want to make sure that our codes and ordinances for life safety and the type of products they use inside the facilities to grow, that it's appropriately monitored and we got the right safety measures in place to be able to ensure that the buildings are safe when growing inside a facility. We have a lot of rules and regulations as it relates to medical marijuana cultivation facility, and we want to make sure that similar regulations are applied to the industrial hemp program as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Garland. Just a quick circle back, whatever, just to make sure, because the one seemingly, I don't want to say controversial, but item in question is number 1. And I wanted to circle back to Council Members Navarro and Cubie to see what their stance was, just to make sure I've got it accurately recorded.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would want to keep the separation standards, I believe.
So keep the second ones we have in place currently.
Yeah, I mean they are restrictive, but I think they're reasonable. And by the way, I thought that the testing related to contaminants, to heavy metals, to pesticides, and not to the potency of the product, but I could be wrong.
I believe they're looking for both.
Okay, and Councilmember Navarro, your thoughts on recommendation number 1?
No, I want to keep them the same. I don't want to read. No, I support that, reducing the separating. No, just keep it as our existing standards are. Just as mentioned, that's what I agree to. I don't. Down the road, we can explore, opening up the gate a little bit more if that's the case. But right now, I'm not supportive.
Okay, sounds good. I'll chime in really quickly too on this, just so we can kind of get to wrap this up. I'm okay. I'm okay with everything except for item number 1. I mean, I would also prefer to leave things exactly where they are with the current separation standards that relate to medical marijuana, but everything else I'm completely comfortable with. And the notion of the marijuana testing facilities, I actually like that one because if this is going to be legal, I would love to have some kind of third-party testing site that could actually determine the potency to make sure that whatever people was buying was as advertised, that the THC levels and everything else were as they are in the package and frankly not elevated to a level that might be frankly unsafe or perhaps dangerous. So I'm okay with all the other recommendations, including working with the Tempe Chamber, but I'm a no on recommendation number 1. Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely concur with what you just said, so I don't have to repeat it. We're all good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So Ryan, I was going to ask you, does it sound like we've got enough consensus and direction to go forward here?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Judy, as well. All right, so what I'm going to do here, because we're so far behind, I'm going to take 2 other items on this agenda, then we're going to adjourn and get to the regular council meeting. But I want to see if we can finish off this section, which is item 2E, strategy tool for aligning resources in Tempe, which is known as the START tool. And that's Ken Jones, our Deputy City Manager / CFO.
Thank you, Mayor. I will do this as quickly as possible. I'm going to be joined by Rosa Inchausti, our Director of Strategic Management and Diversity, and I believe Mark Day is going to share his screen. Alex, there we go. So I'm going to get to the point quickly here. If you could go to the next screen, Mark. And the next screen. So Mayor, let me talk about why we're here and why we're not here. So the START tool is not intended to be input for the city staff. It is not intended to be a vote. We're not asking you tonight what to spend budget money on. And what we are asking you is when we come back to you, as you see, we will come back to you in March and April for your budget input. And when we come back to you with those recommendations from the residents and from the employees, we would like to have in hand some plans and some alternative acceleration tools for the things that you think we're not proceeding quickly enough on. So what we didn't ask you in the START tool is what programs and services in the city are important. What we're asking you is which of those goals that we've established are you not comfortable with the rate at which we are proceeding, and you would like us to show you some modeling of how we might accelerate those. So that's really what we're asking you for. Next slide, Mark, please. So this is just a snapshot of a long document that's in your packet, and it provides the information that your colleagues have given to you, and it's in the format that the City Council has requested in the past. You'll notice that the orange shows those performance measures that people want to see modeling on, that at least 4 council members agreed that those are important to them. The ones in the light blue are those that make up at least half of the total points allocated by council members. And then we also show you the ones in the light green, which are if a council member gave their highest point score to something, but it didn't fall in those first 2 categories, show me those as well. So this was intended for a conversation starter. And what we're asking you tonight is, what performance measures do you want us to come back to you at budget time? What do you want us to come back with that shows you alternative models that accelerate us achieving those goals? And that's it. And then Rosa, if you could just comment on the rest of the stuff in the packet without going slide by slide, if you could just talk about that a little bit, Rosa.
Sure. So thanks, Ken. Rosa Inchausti, Director of Strategic Management and Diversity. As Ken mentioned, prioritization, 8 items were identified. Instead of going through all the slides in the interest of time, I'd like just to just touch base. We've had a pandemic year, so that has affected our performance measures. So instead of going through all of them, I'd like to just say that the ending homelessness, if I can just speak to that for a second, our homeless count with regards to the homeless management information system was 1,286. Just so you know, the baseline was 1,100. So we've had an increase in homeless. And of the new homeless entering our identified by our system of count is 775, which is an increase from 483 when we first identified a baseline in 2018. Those are important points for the mayor and council to know. We diverted 35, but obviously we hope to have 36 diverted, and that didn't get reached yet. The tree coverage, we've had some discussion regarding that. There are some grants that Craig and his team have applied for with partnership with sustainability to look at having a count of how do we manage the asset of trees? How do we identify what percentage of tree coverage we do have on our personal property and private property? And it's a partnership, hopefully, that we receive a grant through Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. And you should know that we're also working with Craig's team in identifying, once we have the overlay of what our tree canopy looks like existing, we would then overlay that from the equity perspective with our equity map and looking at the poverty as far as where the planting takes place. So that's important for the council to know. I know that's a priority for the mayor and council. And speaking with Braden, carbon neutrality is obviously the community performance measure, and then you have the carbon neutrality that is municipal focused. So those are in the works. Pavement quality is something that the council knows that has been on the radar for our communities, specifically in the neighborhoods. And just if I can share with you, once again, there are 3 specific segments of pavement quality. There are arterial, collectors, and neighborhoods. The community has asked for the focus to be on neighborhood streets. And you should know that it's about $3 to $4 million per neighborhood to repave those. So historically, it's been about 12 million. So you have a concept about 4 neighborhoods is what we would be able to take care of in 1 year. So Isaac has said, you know, if we can front end that money and then have the maintenance at the back end. Lastly, the subsidized housing funding usage. That specifically is the vouchers in partnership with HUD. Specifically, we received 1,092 vouchers, but we were only able to deploy, and Mark, if you can just advance to that specific slide, because I think that's important for the council, especially with the pandemic year. So the 79% that you see there and the target of 98, that means that of the 1,092 vouchers that we received from HUD, which equates to about $10 million, we're only able to use 79%. And now that's not an alarm, but it tells you that we're in a pandemic year because we have 984 participants using those vouchers. The increase of need from those participants has been tremendous this year. So in February 2020, we had 5 participants request and report that they had 0 income. As of November 30th, we have 137 families or participants identifying 0 income. Of the 984 participants in this program, we have 620 who've identified a change in their income. And those are folks working in the food industry, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, who are now having to stay home with their families because schools have closed and so forth. The average income is $14,000. I just wanted to share that because I know it's important for the council. And lastly, the next slide, Mark, cybersecurity. And just so you know, also affected by the pandemic, we are now telecommuting. So in speaking with our IT director and looking at what are the new platforms, they are working on a 5-year plan. Hackers have become very sophisticated about what they are now, the opportunities with people working at home. So they would like to try to accelerate that. So with that, I think that's the last item. Oh, I should share with you that the HUD vouchers, in speaking with Levon, he said that is not one that we could accelerate. HUD does not like to commingle the funds between those.
Mark, if you could go back up to the scoring sheet again. So Mayor, this is not intended to be all-inclusive, and it's not intended to be limiting. It is merely those 8 items that met both criteria of getting at least half the points scored by council and at least more than half of the council giving them points. That's all that is. But we are really looking to you to say to us, please bring us models when you bring us back budget proposals that show us how we can do better in these areas. And we're willing to any performance measures that you think you have consensus on, Mayor. So that's it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Rosa. Council, any comments or questions? Councilmember Cubie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll be the first to go. Thank you, Ken, and thank you for, I mean, I know this is one tool, the START tool. It's not the be-all, end-all, and I appreciate the way you approach the explanation of it. And thank you, Rosa, for going over some of the highlights. And yeah, and I know that council was in receipt earlier this week of a letter from the commission, the Sustainability Commission, and we see number 4 and 5, carbon neutrality for operations and for the community was sort of highly ranked listed by both the number of council members and the number of points. So I think that's one I really want to, if you combine those points, just talk carbon neutrality, period, it would be more. So I'd like to see ways we can advance on all of those goals that we voted for almost unanimously. And then the urban forestry is such an important item. And we used to get a lot of grants. Bonnie Richardson was amazing. And apparently, I don't know if this is true, it might just be anecdotal, she was so successful that she was told, like, stop getting us so much grants, we can't even handle it all. So I'd love to see us obviously get more grants, but I think it's, I'm so delighted we have Richard Atkins there to supervise and make sure that we're planting right, that we're taking care of our tree canopy, but we've made very little progress since we adopted that goal to 40% goal. So I really would like to see us supercharge that. And of course, the homelessness, we've seen an increase in our street neighbors and those facing homelessness. We don't know what January is going to bring, but many in the housing community are very worried about the deep housing insecurity that we're going to face, not just in Tempe, but across the state. So that aligns with a lot of thinking from that housing community. With the police trust score, I mean, all of these, we need to look at the scores and they reflect geographic in the city or with different demographics, because you might find variations there, and those variations can be very instructive in how we approach those goals and we approach the strategies for those goals. So that's about all I'll contribute tonight, but thank you so much for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Any other council members, comments or questions? Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate this. I like the idea of being able to see things, comprehensively too. And I agree with Councilmember Cubie. This is just one piece. I mean, there's so many things that we need to consider when it comes to making budget decisions, and this is just one part of it. There's so many other things, and I think a lot of the stuff that we've been using, really hasn't had an opportunity to even reflect how the pandemic is impacting our community, and I think that weighs really heavily with me. In regards to ensuring that our residents have the right human services that they need, that our businesses are doing everything they can to stay in business, and our residents are staying employed. I mean, there's just so many things I think that, when I think of basics that we need to make sure we talk about, safety and ensuring that everyone feels safe. And of course, I think Rosa mentioned, pavement quality index, and really people caring about their neighborhoods. And I really want to make sure that those stay top and forefront. And we really just continue to pay attention to the basic needs of our community, because I think that's what people are seeking right now. And, I know we're going to move forward. We're going to have a lot more discussion on that. But, at the same time, Mayor, I'm really just concerned, and I want to see us just try to make sure that we are staying true to who we are as a community, and understanding that there are basic needs that we need to continue to fulfill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arredondo Savage. Any other council members, comments, questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cubie.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused about what we need to do. And I know we're rushed for time, but I'm thinking in the area of carbon neutrality, I would like to see if there's a consensus to what does acceleration look like for those goals in carbon neutrality. I'd like to have a consensus for that, but I'm not sure. Are we going through each for consensus, or I'm not quite clear on that, but I would like to ask for a consensus for us to just see what acceleration looks like for the carbon goals. I'm sure top goals, actually.
Mayor, this is Ken again. Mark, if you could go to the next slide. I think, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, this one. So Mayor, we think that if the city council agreed that there's consensus that you want to see models for these 8, because these are the criteria that the council has given us in the past, then we would say, okay, we'll bring you models for accelerating all 8 of these. And then I guess the question would be, is there anything that's not on this list that you would also like to see an acceleration model?
Thank you, Ken. That would personally be my preference. I mean, given the fact that all council members had an opportunity to add their input and kind of place their kind of prioritization in certain buckets, and these were the top 8. I think if we could come back with some kind of metric regarding how we can accelerate all 8 of these items, I think that would be the direction I would like to personally go in. Council, any other comments or questions on that thought? Ken?
Mayor Woods, I agree with that approach.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Anyone else?
Mayor, this is Doreen Garland. I agree.
Thank you, Councilmember Garland.
Mayor, the only other thing that I would say that was important in our presentation that we skipped over a little bit, and I would ask Rosa to discuss this briefly, and that is we are working, Rosa's team is working with all of the departments to introduce the concept of equity into our performance measures. And Rosa, if you could use police trust score as an example of how that performance measure might change to reflect a more equitable measurement.
Sure thing. And actually, real briefly, I think we talked about it during the community survey and the employee survey presentation, but real quickly, we're working with all the departments to conduct basically an overlay. And if we have a performance measure, it's not like a one-off. So the police trust score is perfect example. That is based on national average. So what we would also like to do is an equity overlay and perhaps make sure that the performance measure language means something to the community. So it's just not the national average, but also on all segments of demographics of our community. So you may be seeing some of that language change in the performance measures, making sure that we are capturing all segments of our community, not just the majority, if that makes sense.
Yes, Mayor. So instead of having a score that says we expect the trust in our community, the score to be 80, that wouldn't be okay if it was 100% for one segment of our community and 60% for another. What we would say is we want that score to be 80 again across all segments, and then we would look at it from that perspective. So we are Rosa's area is working with all of the departments to incorporate that into our performance measures. And that's the last I had to say.
Sounds good. Thank you. Councilmember Navarro?
Just out of curiosity on where landscaping and appearance of the city came out on the list.
Back one slide, please, Mark. Okay, so that would be, I think it scored very high in terms of a score. I'm looking for it. I believe it is like number 9.
It's 9.
Yes, it's number 9. So you can see that the total score and the average score was very high, but only 3 council members scored it. So if you wanted to see an acceleration model for that, we can bring it.
I would like to see that, if you could, please. I mean, it's right there.
Mayor, we're looking for consensus on that.
Okay.
Yes, I agree, Mayor.
I'm
sorry.
good.
Everyone's good?
Mr. Mayor?
I'm good.
Yes, Councilmember King.
Yeah, I'm good with that. And I would just suggest that we talk about the top 10. And I know number 9 is pre-K, relates to pre-K. We're going to be discussing that later, but it seems natural to sort of go with the top 10. No consensus on that.
Okay. Council, are we okay with the top 10?
I'm good with the top 10.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm good.
Good.
Okay, Mayor.
All right. Sounds good. You've got your consensus on accelerating measures for the top 10.
We do, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you, Rosa.
Thanks.
All right, really quickly here, we've got next up here, item 2F, future agenda items. Any members of council have any future agenda items?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember TV.
I don't have a future agenda item, but just looking at January's work study, like, oy, Gewalt is like 8. Are we going to have to add another meeting perhaps in January to accommodate the heavy load that we have coming forward?
My question is, would we be able to talk about that right now, Madam City Attorney, or would that have to come later?
So perhaps we could consider a calendaring meeting for a future agenda item, and that way it could be addressed in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. My only one future agenda item was actually talking about, I know we've had some conversation with some of our boards and commissions, and we were also in receipt of a letter talking about, some of our boards and commissions really wanting more engagement with staff and even directly with mayor and council. And I'm wondering if we could have something, maybe not necessarily at the next work study, because I know we're probably going to be also equally as packed on January 14th, if maybe the chair of that particular board or commission, along with the staff liaison who's assigned to that board, could actually come back to the council and kind of present and ask and get some direction directly from the council. And maybe if that's okay with council, I'd like to maybe work with with our clerk, Carla, to see if we can find an appropriate date to get something like that on the agenda. But it's just sort of in the spirit of getting our boards and commissions who spend so much volunteer time offering their input and feedback and direction to the city to make sure that they know that they've got a lot of direct contact, not only with the staff, but obviously members of the city council as well.
I'm sorry, can you clarify, are you asking that of all the commissions? I would, we're talking about equity so much, I would hope that that's something that you're offering to all of our commissions?
Yes, absolutely, Councilmember.
Okay.
Yep, any that wanted to come forward. If some don't want to come forward, that's fine. It might only be 2 or 3 or 4, but yes, I would clearly make that offer across the board.
And then can I follow up with a question? I was remembering at the retreat, there was some discussions about, maybe processes when it comes to our commissions. I thought, that was something that I thought Councilmember Garland brought up, which was a really good idea about, kind of looking overall of how we can definitely do that and improve the processes and the communication between the commissions and the council. Is that something that's still happening?
This is Councilmember Garland. As far as I'm concerned, I would like it to still continue. We were going to wait until we set up our new committee programs or system before we move forward on that. At least that's my recollection. Mayor Woods?
Yep, that's fine with me, Councilmember Garland. I mean, if we're still looking at some of our procedures as we just sort of discussed, I think that's perfectly appropriate.
Thank you, Robin.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, I'm also in support of any of the boards and commissions that want to present to us. I think it's a good idea. They work really hard and volunteer a lot of times, so I would be very much in favor of that. And also for a future agenda item, I'd like to have the Tempe tourism give a presentation on, just give an update basically on how it's going in our tourism. And that would be fine, I think, in February, because I know we're full in January.
Okay, sounds good, Councilmember Adams. So if we could add an update and report out from the Tempe Tourism Board, that would be great for February. The only thing I'd like to add to just go back to my request about that future agenda item is if we could maybe, there are a couple of commissions, whatever, that I'd love to kind of put in front just because they've more specifically made asks. That would be the Sustainability Commission, Transportation, and the Neighborhood Advisory Commission, if we're going to do some prioritization, since they have made specific asks, whatever, to kind of maybe have some further dialogue with the council.
Sounds good to me. It's Lauren.
Thank you, Councilmember Cubie.
This is Councilmember Garland. I'm good with that.
Right. Thank you. All right. Any other future agenda items? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close that meeting, our issue review session. I want to take one item here off of the next agenda, simply because we had a couple of comment cards. So I want to make sure that those folks know that we're discussing that item. So item number 4 4.2 actually here, the Tempe pre-funding. Since we had a couple of speakers, and I know we had several council communicators, I'd like to take that one and then adjourn this meeting and get to the regular council meeting because I know we have several speakers and comment cards. So if we could take item 2, Tempe pre-funding. I'm curious, okay, do we have any council members who want to speak to this working group, and is there some kind of request?
We're not just taking comment, we're going into committee to whole items now?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless I would ask Councilmember Keeley, to Madam Clerk, are there any further comment cards that came in since then on this item?
Mayor, no additional cards have been submitted, and we read the items for 4A2 previously.
Got it.
And had our speakers on the floor.
Sounds good. Just wanted to make sure there weren't any others. So,
Mr. Mayor, this is Lauren. I would recommend that we, because there's going to be a presentation by staff about pre-K, I believe. So I just think it's going to go longer. Perhaps can we come back to it?
okay, I was just trying to make sure we did because I know we had a couple of speakers, but if the council's okay with that, we can adjourn this meeting and come back to that. Is that okay? All right, hearing none, I'm gonna guess that it is. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and adjourn right now that meeting, and we're gonna go ahead and flip over to the regular council meeting immediately. Thank you. Let's go ahead here and just do a very quick thing here. Just another brief call to the audience, which is item number 3. The City Council welcomes public comment at this time for items listed under sections 4A and 4B, Committee of the Whole items on this work study agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. Madam Clerk, any speaker or comment cards for this next section?
We had already read the 4A2 items for Tempe pre into the record previously, and we have no additional submissions.
Okay, sounds good. Then I'm going to move on here to item, let's do this then. Let me just take these a little out of order here. Let me just go ahead and do number 2, which is Tempe pre, and then I'll go back to the first one. So do we have any council members here who want to speak to this working group?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Cubey.
Yeah, before we talk about Tempe pre-recommendations, the working group asked staff to present a brief overview of where we are currently. I think Alex has the presentation. And is it Marie that will be presenting?
Marie has been elevated into a panelist. Go ahead, Marie.
Elevated, great.
All right. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Marie Raymond, Human Services Manager, and I can provide a brief update on the current status of our Tempe Pre program. So if you remember, our initial pilot launched 20 classrooms in 11 schools serving 360 children. This school year, the program size was reduced in response to the across-the-board budget reductions to its current size of 11 classrooms in 7 schools serving a maximum of 198 children. Next slide, please. The city's contribution is augmented with revenue from tuition and fees and with revenue from our braided funding from Maricopa County Head Start. Our current estimated expenditures are lower than anticipated due to several federal funding that was received and savings realized due to some staff vacancies initially in the school year. With these unanticipated additional revenues and the cost savings, we expect an estimated $500,000 in savings at the end of this fiscal year. A key element in developing Tempe Pre was to ensure a high-quality learning environment, and we are very proud to report that all current classrooms meet or exceed quality standards set by the statewide Quality First Star ratings. In the first 3 years of the program, our families reported significant positive impacts as a result of having safe, high-quality, affordable childcare. As you can see, 52% of our families were able to work additional hours. Families were able to go back to school, reduce the amount of government assistance, obtain secure housing for their family, and an amazing 40% of families saw a 28% increase in income. So now during our current pandemic, we continue to hear positive feedback from families. So thanks to Tempe Pre, families can continue to work knowing that they have care for their children. They're able to save money on childcare costs, which they then can use to help pay rent, utilities, and other expenses. And the health and safety of our children and their teachers is our highest priority, and we follow strict cleaning and sanitation protocols in accordance with CDC guidelines, as well as enforcing the wearing of face coverings and appropriate physical distancing. We're also proud that we align with the city's Right to Breathe initiative, and by ensuring access to quality preschool for all, even amidst the pandemic. Looking at the demographics of our families, our Tempe Pre families are very diverse, and they reflect Tempe Elementary District's majority minority population. In regards to the income levels of our families, 76% of our families have incomes at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. 17% of our families are able to access the program at a reduced tuition rate, and 7% of our families pay full tuition. In addition to Mayor and Council's operational support of Tempe Pre, we've also received over $2 million of philanthropic and community support, largely for research and evaluation, as you can see on this slide. And so at this point, I'll turn it back over to Councilmember Kuby.
Thank you so much, Marie. We so appreciate all that you've done to make the program such a great success. So our working group finds ourselves in a bit of a sticky wicket. Our intention had always been to put the question to the voters, just as we did with the arts tax, to allow the voters to decide what they wish, whether they wish to see a dedicated funding source for Tempe Pre, and perhaps even for a larger child-friendly Tempe initiative. We were working on the details of all that, and then the pandemic hit, and the group consensus was that it wasn't the best time to proceed with a financial proposal to the ballot. So unfortunately, state law limits when we can propose new taxes, and the next opportunity would be November 2022, so about 2 years from now. So it leaves us with those 2 years of funding to secure. And we have ideas how to do that, but we first want to talk about why we think we should do that. So as Marie indicated, now more than ever, Tempe families are struggling. For the essential workers who can't work from home, or those who've lost jobs and need to find new ones, the security that full day pre-K provides is something they can't do without. And this program has always been that safety net program, and we need more safety nets, more safety nets now, not fewer. So it's also important that we protect the investments we made. You saw the $2 million from education and philanthropic partners. These are infrastructure improvements, they're teacher training, program development, and all that would disappear if we shut down this program. And as our amazing teachers then would take these skills to other schools, and we lose all that investment in our personnel. So any attempt to bring back in the future would be far more expensive, and we just basically have to start from scratch again. Out of respect for the taxpayer dollars we put into building the program and all the money contributed by local foundations, we feel we need to do everything we can to preserve the program for another 2 years until the next election opportunity. And that of course means that we should continue the program because of the outstanding outcomes we get in kindergarten readiness levels and what we know it means for long-term school success. Next slide. We know these are really difficult financial times, so we decided to create opportunities for local businesses, developers, foundations to support the program. Next slide. They can do so at various levels as been designed by staff, and thank you so much to staff, Human Services, and to Marie. As you can see, we broke down what each level covers for a child or for a classroom. And we wouldn't turn away naming rights either for completely pay for the program too. Next slide. So I know it's confusing, so I want to be clear, the current school year is already funded, so we're funded through the next school year, through June 2021. So what we're talking about is the next year, which begins July 1st in the new fiscal year. And while we have time to pursue these sponsorship opportunities, we do have a decision point, which is why we're here tonight, because teacher contracts are required in January. We can't delay them if we intend to go forward with the program. We asked about delaying it, but January is the deciding time. So what we're asking council tonight is consensus to start offering these sponsorship options to the business community, to philanthropists, and anyone else who has a desire to support Tempe Pre. We're also asking for consensus on moving forward and committing to these teacher contracts. And this is, I just want to stress, and Ken would stress it with me, that this isn't a budget conversation or discussion of where any needed funds may come from, as we need to discuss that in the context of the full budget picture. And only when we know that, if any, funds might be needed. But it does mean that if we're not able to raise all the revenue through the fundraising efforts we described, that remaining balances would have to be built into next year's budget. And that's where we invite your questions and discussion. So when we agreed to fund the initial 2-year pilot program, it was a really big red letter day for our city. Families that fell beneath the poverty line were able to send their kids to great preschools and give a much needed leg up in starting their own education. So adding the next 2 years was gravy and much needed, proving how important that you all felt, how the council felt that access to education was for our children. And I know that you're working on permanent funding in the form of a possible sales tax increase. The timing just wasn't right with COVID to add that to our ballots this fall. So until we can vote on that tax increase, and it'd have to be referred by, I believe, June 2022. And of course, there's so much to be worked out to get to that point. We're asking that you sign the contracts for teachers, agree that the contracts can be signed so we don't lose the teachers and lose the program and all the momentum that we've accrued over these past 4 years. So our working group is recommending that we proceed with the contracts to protect the investment in infrastructure, program development, teacher training that's been made by the city, Tempe L, early childhood advocates, as well as foundation and philanthropic partners. It's definitely a group effort, and we believe that that we're all going to benefit in the community, no matter if we have kids or grandkids or no kids at all. The community greatly benefits from Tempe Pre. So with that, I'm asked if the other working group members would like to add to the discussion before we ask for the council to weigh in.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else have any, Councilmember Navarro?
No, I was just gonna just chime in, and obviously the working group has done a lot of work in making sure that the data is there, the information that we requested from way back when, to make sure in tracking the information needed to make sure that this program is on the right track. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing, not only for the kids, but for the parents also. And you know, overwhelmingly, we're seeing, you know, it's not the case. It's not lying. It is what it is, and we're doing a great job in providing the service to the community. The biggest issue, obviously, is how do we continue on funding the program at a minimal level to potentially, you know, see if there is going to be funding later on down the road. I think the biggest ask is not only from the work group, but from the city council as a whole. If we're going to support this, are we willing to ask key business partners in our community and or around our community to help support this program? And we don't know if that money is going to be enough to support it, or we will get half of it. You know, we don't know the answers to those questions, but then the city will have to be, if we do agree to this, the city will have to be on the hook of supporting the program if we commit to this. But we do feel that with the information that's provided to the council tonight, if we're able to show that the benefit of what this program can do, not only for our community, but for the businesses within our community, for the people that work at those businesses that have or have kids in the pre-K area, the benefit that we're going to give them just being part of our community, and this is what the city of Tempe does for our residents, you know, is going to have a big impact. And that's pretty much where this is going, and see what the council is going to say on this. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro. Vice Mayor Keating?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo some of what my colleagues have said. I mean, and what, you know, the information that Marie has presented. it's clear that this program is providing a positive benefit, but not only to Tempe's children, but there's secondary and tertiary economic and quality of life benefits that kind of ripple from it. And I had hoped by now that we would have an answer to the question, is Tempe in the preschool business? But as Councilmember Kuby pointed out, COVID changed those plans like so many other plans this year. So it's unfortunate that we're here talking about another bridge, but the strategy of the working group has been, since we decided not to move forward with permanent funding, is that we got to keep this thing on life support so we don't lose our momentum. We keep expanding not only our ability to administer the program, but the popularity of the program. We keep looking for ways to bring down the cost through sponsorships, as Councilmember Navarro mentioned, creative, sliding scales and other ways to reduce costs and provide a better product to Tempeans at a cheaper price point. So I will be supporting this. We do need to make sure that we continue this. I do think it'd be different if the legislature had any desire whatsoever to fund education in the state of Arizona. And I always mention this when we talk about pre-K during my first campaign when I was knocking doors. It came up quite a bit. People would be like, is there anything the city can do for education? And I basically would tell them no. Pre-K wasn't even on my mind, thinking about doing something in that regard. So I do think this is something that the citizens of Tempe largely would support. I am definitely open to creative solutions to this problem because I do know that this is a lot of money in times when money is, when we're very concerned about our budget. So if there are creative solutions to making sure we can keep this program alive, I'd certainly be open to that. But for the purposes of tonight's discussion, I would like to move forward with what's been proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Keating. Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. I guess I got a few things I really want to say, and I know it's late and everybody's a little bit tired, but this is something that's really important, a really important program that impacts a lot of people, impacts a lot of families within our community, and the staff that have worked really hard to get this program to the level that it's at right now. I definitely do appreciate the work and the partnership that we've had with Tempe-L. So I'm just going to say a few things and some of my concerns, and I think some of the positive things that have definitely come out of pre-K. And one of the things that I think that we talked about in the beginning, and there was a time when everybody thought I wasn't supportive of pre-K, and that was never true. I always knew and still do believe that there is a place for pre-K and a need for pre-K, not only to allow our youngest youth to get off on a great track, but to be able to connect with their families and to ensure that they also have the resources that they may need to make sure that their families are safe and healthy and well taken care of. And I know that this program has really, that's kind of been one of the unexpected side effects of pre-K, is the ability to reach out to the families and to be able to make those connections and ensure that they have the right resources that they need. And I think that is a really fantastic thing. And I'll tell you, that is one thing that we are really good at, is making sure that we are providing the right resources where they need to go. So I'm grateful for our group of people that continue to do that. One of the things that we talked about when we first implemented this program was having some type of funding source in the future, that we were worried about sustainability, and that we are currently right now in the position where I was hoping that we wouldn't be when we started this pilot 4 years ago, for 2 years. And then they came to us on that third year, and we came up with some money to do a Band-Aid to get to the next year. And then here we are again, our backs up are against the wall. We're talking about $1.5 million, which is a significant amount of money that for me is completely outside of the budget process. And our budget process is so comprehensive, and we come so far. We have strategic goals and priorities that everybody has worked on, all the departments have really bought into, and it just pains me to have such important items come before us at this time outside of the budget process. And that to me is really concerning. We've talked, there's talk when this pilot started about looking for funds and sponsorships and great things like that. And great, we did get some wonderful partners, but unfortunately those partners, are really helping more with professional development and data, like Councilmember Cubey said. They're not helping with operations, and that's the problem. So there is no funding that has been received or sought out to be able to help with operations. So I know the Vice Mayor mentioned it, are we meant to be in the business of pre-K? And I do know that Tempe L had a great successful pre-K program prior to that. So I don't want pre-K to go away. I want to find a way that it can become sustainable on itself. And I will tell you, I just don't think that we've looked really hard enough at the format of the program, at the things that we're doing in regards to operations to make sure that it can be sustainable. I like the idea of staying connected with the families as they come in, but maybe it's time to really work with Tempe L and let them be back in the business of education and really embrace Tempe pre-K. I don't know if we've ever had that conversation, and maybe that's some way that we can support them financially for many years to come, and to alleviate maybe some of the expenses for us, but yet still support a really successful program. I just feel like I haven't seen a lot of flexibility or creativity in regards to the future of this program and really making sure that it's sustainable. I feel like, we're kind of on life support every single year, and that's just not the way that we should be doing business. And be at this point where we're talking about having to do, contracts in January because they need to be back in February. And I get that. And that time frame's moved up too since we started. I know contracts are going out much earlier and coming back earlier than they ever have been. I mean, every district wants to beat out other districts to make sure that they get the best and the brightest, and I certainly understand that too. So, I'm really kind of caught myself here in between a rock and a hard spot because, I love the program. I think it's really important. I've always advocated for youth. I think that cradle to career and the work that Marie and her team has done to really show the steps along the way is really important. But it does pain me a lot to talk about any item large like this out of the budget process. And I do feel like everything should compete at the budget level, and especially with all the work and energy that we put into that process. I think it would be more fair to everybody and to all the departments to ensure that we are creating that equity across the board. So, if we do move forward, I don't want the program to go away, but I do want to see us really take a deep dive and figure out what can we do differently to ensure there's some sustainability moving forward. And what is the minimum that we would have to do out of pocket now to keep things intact, and what does that timeline look like? So if I could get a little bit more information on that, and I'm not really sure what the 1.5 particularly gets. Does it buy the whole program for the year, or are we just talking about contracts for the teachers? And if we're just talking about contracts for the teachers, is that less than 1.5? So Mayor, like I said, I love the program. I love the fact that we're able to really connect with our families out in the community that need the resources the most, and they've been able to access them, and we've been able to build great relationships. And I think that's really key and important. And however we move forward, or whatever that looks like in the future, that is one piece of it I want to ensure that keeps intact. I think that engagement piece is really significant and very important. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Arredondo Savage. Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tempe Pre does a great job, and I'm in favor of keeping it going. I've gone to the schools. The kids are adorable. I've watched how advanced they are for their ages, and it's just been, it's a very exceptional program, and I love it. However, I am concerned about the city having over $300,000 in administrative cost that is not going to the kids. And Ken Jones, I think you could speak to that. What was the exact figure on that? Do you remember? Like $347,000 in administration costs?
Yes, Mayor, council member, that's about right. I think it was $340,000, almost $350,000 current fiscal year that was in the cost center for city administration of the program.
So that seems really high to me for a $1.5 million budget. So I think we need to really reach out to the school district and see how we can reduce our administration costs. I'm also a little disappointed that we didn't get it out on the bond to get it to the voters because we said we would. And I'm quite confident our voters would support it, but it makes me nervous when we say we're going to do something and then that doesn't get done. Once again, I am supportive of keeping it going, but I think that we need to think outside the box a little more and make it more affordable for both the city and also increase our communication with Tempe L and streamline our operations. So I obviously want to keep it going, but I just think we need to look at some of our costs that are being incurred and seeing if we can partner with the school districts. I think somebody has their button on. So anyway, I just to sum it up, I just want to try to look at how we can streamline our operations and make it more cost effective and get the kids all the help they need. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Just wanted to quickly say something, then I'm going to go back to Councilmember Cubie. I support moving forward with this as well. I've heard amazing things about the Tempe pre-program. It really was sort of started after I left the council. I know it was sort of getting up and running at that point, at least kind of from a conceptual standpoint, but it really started after I left. And I've heard wonderful things about the program from parents and the teachers, and obviously the kids of the program are amazing. So I definitely support keeping it going and understand while this is a big budget request, given the uncertainty due to COVID-19 and us sort of not knowing exactly when things are going to subside and life is going to go back to normal, whatever in quotations, that we kind of knew before the pandemic. At the same time, I totally understand the concept of outlaying some of this money to ensure that we can keep the very talented teachers who are part of this program and doing so much to educate the next generation of youth in our city. And so I think it's critically important that we do that. So I support this. I will say moving forward, I want to speak to some of the concerns really quickly, though, about the kind of long-term sustainability from a financial standpoint with the program. I know we definitely need to find additional funding sources to make sure that this can happen. And I think there's other people who've also talked about wanting to see if there are ways that we may be able to continue this program with the use of grants or philanthropy or something else, other than simply just talking about, a tax increase of some sort. So that's also something where I'm not just simply saying that, I'm definitely offering myself up as a resource if there's an ability to talk to some of the local, statewide, or national education foundations to see if we could actually find some money to keep a program going that's obviously producing demonstrable results for our youth. So, I support the program, understand definitely some of the fiscal concerns moving forward and keeping it going for the long term, and definitely want to be part of the solution on the front line and trying to find some additional sustainable funding. Next up, I'm going to go to Councilmember Cubie and then Councilmember Garland.
Yes, and I don't want to take Councilmember Garland's time, but just to answer Councilmember Aredonis Savage's question, the salaries are 1.16 million, so 1,160,000, and then it's 340,000 for costs, administrative costs and such, and other costs that we can get more detailed. So I just wanted to clarify that, and also to clarify to Councilmember Adams that we weren't proposing a bond, but perhaps a sales tax increase, which was as yet undetermined, and we were getting close to getting the details of that and getting it out for public comment, but of course with COVID we didn't feel comfortable moving ahead with that. Thank you.
Your clarification, I appreciate it.
Great, Councilmember Garland.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that when I was on the Tempe Impacts Education Foundation board, I had heard about Tempe Pre and how important this was and what a difference it really made, and listening to teachers who had these kids coming up later in grades and understanding what a difference it made to them, to the teachers' help, and to the students. The difference that it also made for the parents to be able to have a safe place or have a place for their child so that they could go to work and not have to worry about them. So I am absolutely in support of the Tempe program. I am, concerned about the fiscal concerns and where the money is going to come from, and praying that we will be able to get a sales tax, like Councilmember Cubie said, or something else for the future to make this more sustainable in the future, but I am in support of this, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on council? Any comments or questions?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, going forward, and I know Ken has enlightened us, you know, the fact of we do take money away from something, and I think we all know that. And as we're going through the budget of this year, we have to recognize that. So wholeheartedly, I think this program is great, and I think everyone does. And I think that, you know, even with Councilmember Redondo, we can recognize this puts us in a tough position because we see tremendous benefit from this. And in the perfect world, we would wish the state would step up to support these types of programs. But in the meantime, I want you to know that I'm putting everyone on the hook. We are going to try to raise what we can to offset the cost for this program for the next year. And then if we have to do the same thing for the following year. But I think with what the program has proven, this is probably not I'm hoping this is not a hard ask when we talk about, you know, talking to businesses, philanthropical dollars that we're trying to get raised here. I think that there's a high probability that we could probably have some good success if all of us work together on this. And so that's the challenge for us all, just so you're clear.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro. Anyone else from council? Any comments? Councilmember Cubey?
Oh, just one thing to throw in there, that thank you so much for your commitment to help us, Mr. Mayor, because you have the bully pulpit and you're so persuasive with those philanthropists. So we appreciate that. But also wanted to ask that the working group, this one's going to be hard to fit into a newly constructed council committee, because there's 3 of us that have been working on this for a year and a half or 2 years, and we're not going to be on the same council committee. So I'm hoping that we can stay as a group to work on this and carry it to fruition.
Hi, Councilmember Cubey. Let me go before we actually talk about that. I would like to go back to the previous item before that, which is going to be talking about the new council committee structure to see if it would somehow work though within one of the new committees, because I know we really are trying to close these things out. It's not about obviously the issue of Tempe pre-dying. I mean, clearly we do have the support from the majority of the council members here, I think from everyone here, to keep the program going. But I would like to see if we could try to make sure that we can shoehorn this into one of the new 3 committees as opposed to keeping a separate group open.
I support that, Mayor. I like that idea because I agree with you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. I'm a little delirious, but I think that I just don't want to do the one-offs with, I want to make a clean cut and let go of our commit. I mean, really work into that committees and give it 100%, and hopefully you can find a way to make that work. So I support that effort.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilmember Redondo Savage. Yeah, I definitely understand and respect Councilmember Cubey's concern about this, but let's try to close this item out. Then let's maybe go back to the previous item, which actually kind of addresses some of this, and maybe we can actually cover it. So looks like though, given that we've got consensus to move forward with Tempe Pre, for the upcoming year, so we are good. I think Marie, Ken, I think you've got all the direction you need.
Thank you so much, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. All right, next up here, going back, item 4A, so we're looking into the committee of the whole items here, and I wanted to talk about the new council committee model, and that's item number 1. And so here's my proposal. This is only a draft, and obviously people can feel free to, whether you talk about the name of the committee or perhaps the work plan that's suggested. But I won't read all of this. But we basically have it broken down into 3 committees. Myself and Brianne worked on this, and I give Brianne, much of the credit for frankly putting this together. I think she did an exceptional job. looking at the first committee here, which we called Workforce Readiness and Economic Vitality. And the people that I've slated for that are Councilmember Arredondo Savage and Vice Mayor Keating. And actually, I will go through these really quickly, just we're talking about them. Achieve quality early learning for Tempe children, which seems like that would definitely very much cover Tempe pre. Value of special events at the city, special events. Achieve an equal pay earnings ratio. Engage employers to achieve a veteran supportive designation. Annual average unemployment rate that is below the average for Greater Phoenix region, and achieve a rate of 65% for Tempe residents who have a post-secondary certificate, 2-year degree, or 4-year degree by 2030, which is our Achieve 65 plan. That's just one of the, that's the proposed there. The next one would be sustainable systems and infrastructure, and that would be Councilmember Adams and Councilmember Cubie. And the sort of related performance measures based on the START tool, I should have said that as well. The citywide tree and shade canopy program, 100% compliance with the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity, GHG emissions, carbon neutrality in municipal operations, pavement quality, quality of landscape maintenance along streets and sidewalks, achieve 100% compliance with industry standards related to the replacement or rehabilitation of infrastructure and assets, meet or exceed Safe Drinking Water Act standards for water quality, achieve an average facilities condition index less than or equal to the national benchmark standards. And obviously, as we talked about before, and it was sort of referenced in some of the earlier letters, making sure that people feel welcome in terms of contributing to city decision making. And I think that very much speaks to, frankly, our residents and our business community. And the last one that was proposed was the Human Services and Community Safety Committee. That would be proposed Council members Navarro and Garland. And the performance measures there based on the START tool results were the trust score in police sentiment survey, working to end homelessness in Tempe, housing choice voucher program optimization, quality of local police services, feeling of safety in parks, feeling of safety in your neighborhood, and obviously in tackling the housing inventory ratio for affordable workforce and market rate housing. That's once again, this was just simply a draft we put together for the sake of your consideration. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll call upon you. So I see Vice Mayor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor Woods, and thank you, Brianne, for putting this together. I think it's fantastic. One thing that, since we are talking about the workforce, I didn't hear in the strategic priorities, I would like to talk about equity amongst pay, and making sure that Tempe is a city that prioritizes living wages. So I just want to make sure that that's included in like the strategic priorities. I didn't hear that, but it's also 11 o'clock at night, so I may have missed it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Keating. Councilmember TV.
Well, we're just being presented this now, and I'd like to chew on some of it because I had the thought that we'd be having sort of a subject area, and then we would design our priorities from that. And we have the areas that you're listing are priorities that we've given to staff, and we say we want to advance these areas, and they come back and they give us suggestions for how to do that. But we need to ensure that new ideas that come forward and new performance measures get considered, right? So there's just a lot of questions I have about that.
Sure.
Sure, it's not a rigid system, and I don't know when we're going to talk about it in depth or in detail, but the performance measures are measures that are our priorities that we hand over to staff, and to me, what the committees deal with can be more general areas, and there may not be a performance measure that exists for that area. And we want to make sure that we continue to be the city that makes waves in the desert, that innovates, and by just sticking to the performance measures that we've already established, that may kind of restrict that a bit. I have a lot of thoughts going through my head, and maybe we could find some time to talk about it.
Yep, absolutely. And Councilmember Cubie, you said something that was totally correct, amongst many other things you said that were correct. You talked about, kind of basically the concept, whatever, is that, these sort of strategic priorities that are outlined here are just sort of trying to kind of give general themes to the committee and to get you started on a work plan. So they're just sort of meant to sort of frame the topics, but obviously if there are other things that need to be added or even subtracted to make sure that we're continuing to innovate, and as you said, continuing to make waves in the desert, I'm definitely, not going to make any effort to stop or stifle any of that, but definitely happy to talk with you offline to see whatever we can do to ease any concerns. Let's see, anyone else from council, any comments or questions?
This is Councilmember Garland. I love my partner and my area, so thank you.
Thank you. I love Councilmember Navarro as well.
Mayor, hey, this is Robin. I'm not going to say anything about.
Could
I'm not
have
gonna say
everyone
anything
chime
about
in? This is
loving
good.
my partner, but we already do have a pact with the round table with Randy and Robin, so this is just kind of par for the course. And the only other thing I noticed on here when we were looking about workforce readiness and economic vitality, I didn't see a lot about, and I guess I need to go back and look at the performance measures a little bit too, though, just about business success within Tempe. So I don't know what that might equate to, but at first glance, I'm totally good with this, and I know we'll probably be making some tweaks along the way. So looking forward to it, Randy.
Me too.
All right, anyone else? Comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor, can we have some time to kind of process it and?
Absolutely. I mean, this was merely a draft, and I definitely don't want anyone to get overly concerned about anything, but just a draft. We tried to, get people thinking and kind of get some topics on paper. But obviously, if you have questions or concerns or comments after the fact, as you guys always know where to reach me, and I'm happy to make some adjustments. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Adams. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, let's go to item number 3 here, which is Tempe Works, and see if there's any council members who want to speak to this working group.
I'll speak to it, Mayor. Just really quickly. So I think we're in our 3rd year of Tempe Works, and wish I had a nice way to say it, but it is 11 o'clock. I've been kind of disappointed in the amount of people we're able to get into the program, and as far as the metrics go, and I know we've referred dozens of people to jobs that aren't within the city through the program, but that's not being tracked by anybody. So we had a pretty contentious working group meeting about a year ago, and since then there still hasn't been much happening here, and pushing on Brianne, because she was the staffer working that working group, and then of course other members of staff working the program. And essentially the consensus is, look, this is a complicated program. It takes a lot of time and effort to administer. There's things that need to happen that don't happen because it's not on someone's radar every day. There's no one thinking about how do we get more people into the program, how do we move the people into the program from the stepping stones into more permanent positions. Because it's not really their job, right? It's something that was kind of added, and it's added to so many people's plates that there's a great difficulty to kind of coordinate this. So, as you can see from the memo, I'm asking for some money to hire essentially a coordinator to hopefully streamline this program and really kind of get it firing so that it's able to reach a greater potential. I did feel like I kind of had to micromanage a thing, and that's not something any council member wants to do. And now that we're closing the working groups in favor of a committee system, I'm worried that without someone constantly, bringing it up, it might just kind of start fizzling out. So I'm asking the council to agree to $20,000 for a coordinator for this program. Thank you.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes.
This is Robin.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Arnaud. I forgot to mention one thing. Money for the coordinator is already budgeted in the existing program. So I'm not asking for additional funding, just to kind of reallocate the funding. Sorry, that's a very important point. Sorry about that.
Nope, no worries. Thanks, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to offer my 2 cents in regards to, being part of this working group, and I think some of the challenges that we face. But I do want to just recognize the potential of this program. I think that, we definitely learned a lot in regards to things that we have done in the past that we can definitely do better. I have a ton of confidence in our staff. They already have a game plan moving forward and what that looks like, and some of the missteps along the way. Nothing is perfect out of the chute, and the fact that they believe in the program and really do believe that this can significantly make an impact on individuals for the long haul. To me, I think it's worth the investment to do a reallocation and give them the opportunity to get it right and really change the lives of people, because that's specifically what we're doing. It's really a comprehensive look. It's not just putting somebody to work for a day and earning their keep for a little bit. This is actually something that's going to change their life for a lifetime. So I hope that the council will support the vice mayor and the committee and allow us to move some of that money around, so we can better work the program and even have better outcomes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else, council? Councilmember Garland?
Hi, thank you, Mayor. I completely agree with Robin, and I'm a little tired, but I'm trying to remember how you say this quote. It's like, instead of it's better to teach somebody how to fish than to make them a dinner. I don't know, you guys can help me fix that. But anyway, that's what I look at this program. And the last time that I did the point in time count, it was so exciting because one of the gentlemen that we talked to, he had not heard of the Tempe Works program. And I think I was with Paul Bentley, and he had mentioned it to this gentleman and told him how he could be a part of it. And he was so excited, just the look on his face that there was an opportunity for him. And it seemed to fit his criteria, fit what he needed and fit what we needed. And so I have a lot of faith in this program, and I'm really happy to support it moving forward and reallocating the money. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, I was on mute. Councilmember Adams, yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, I just want to say real quick, I'm in favor of continuing this program too. I think it's awesome, and I think I'd like to see it expand, and hats off to the committee that's put this together.
Thank you. Councilmember Cubie?
I support it as well.
Cool. Sounds good. I support it as well.
We're all there.
We're all there. Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Keating.
Thank you, and thank you to council members Navarro and Hernando Savage, who worked on this committee with me. It was my first committee, and it was very helpful to have their institutional knowledge and experience to be able to bring my wild ideas to fruition.
Thank you very much. All right, looking forward here. Item number 4, Broadway Corridor Revitalization. See if any council members want to speak to this working group.
Yeah, Mayor, it's me again. So we're closing out all my working groups tonight. So this was a committee that I served on with Councilmember Navarro and former Mayor Mitchell, and it brought us the Tempe Maker District, which I'm very proud of. But given the discussions we've had around setting vision and standards for our new innovation hubs, when we talk about the Maker District and now we're talking the Smith Industrial Hub, I do think it's important that we have a consistent and uniform standard created around what we're going to do for the city, as far as things like Councilmember Kubi brought up: setbacks, open space, parks, access to alternative transportation, so that there's clear vision, so that when we have different projects come forward, it's not always kind of I like this and don't like that. It's no, this is either aligns with what we've put out there, what we put out to the market, or it doesn't. And I think it'll give the council more tools to kind of pick and choose what exactly we're looking for in these individual areas. So you can see from the memo that we're asking for some money, essentially to hire a consultant to lay out a vision for our new industrial hubs, both Smith and Tempe Maker District to kind of streamline these processes and make both of those places, really stand out in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Keating. Any other members of council, any comments or questions? I'll say something that I am completely in support of this. I mean, given the conversation we had earlier this evening regarding the Smith Hub and talking about the Tempe Maker District, I mean, I think it's really important that whatever we put forward to residents does need to, as close as humanly possible, be as advertised. And so whatever we can do to really put some additional teeth into some of the design standards and sort of the vision that we lay out to residents, I think that this is a small price, frankly, to pay to make sure that we can deliver on those promises and deliver on that vision to the residents of the city of Tempe. So I'm in full and complete support of this.
Me too, Mayor. This is Robin.
Thank you.
Mayor. Yep, this is Joel. Full support.
Thank you.
Full support for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm on board, Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Well, looks like we're good on that front. I don't see any other hands. I think we're good. Thank you very much. Next up is item B, new items for city council consideration. Does anyone have any items?
Can I say bid?
Ha! Yes, you can. All right, looks like no one's bringing anything up. Okay, let's see here. So going to the next thing, items 4C3, 4C6, and 4C8 are listed as items under items in progress. Those are all being closed. And just wanted to note that we're going to continue to, as the working group process is transitioning to the new council committee structure, which will launch in January. And the working groups are going to continue to close out over the coming months. Does anyone need to comment on any of this?
Mayor, I do. I'm sorry, but I do. Is that okay? You're not talking, so
That's
I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna talk about the student housing working group that's actually been alive and well for, I don't know, a very long time. And I just really want to thank, all of our community partners that worked really hard to try to find some really good solutions so that, we could have healthy neighborhoods and that our neighbors would appreciate everyone that came to live or to be their neighbor. And it was definitely very challenging, but it was great to have ASU at the table and our community development and just really explore best practices, across the nation and who was doing things well and who wasn't. And there was a lot of really good things that came out of it. And I don't need to read this to you guys. You can read it. And we talked about the loud party ordinance. We talked about 7 stories. I mean, there were so many things that we did. We really looked at parking. And things to that effect. I know I'm not functioning well now because it's after 10, but I just really wanted to take a quick second to say thank you. I mean, we definitely haven't given up on ensuring that, all of our neighbors, have a great quality of life, regardless of who lives next to them. But our partnership with ASU has definitely expanded and enhanced over the years, where they're now involved in when it comes to, loud party ordinance or different concerns from residents, regarding code enforcement. So, just grateful to the partners with code enforcement, community development, ASU, for really trying to pull together, a great program for the quality of life in our neighborhoods. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Ardano Savage. All right, anything else on any other items? All right, hearing none. I don't, under number 5, mayor's announcements and city manager's announcements, I don't have any. Mr. City Manager, do you have anything regarding the eviction prevention task force?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Staff was prepared to speak about some of the items that came out of the eviction prevention task force that met, as Councilmember Adams spoke about during the regular council meeting. I spoke to staff. We feel like Councilmember Adams covered that pretty well. So we were not going to, at this late hour, layer another presentation on top of all of you. We are, however, ready to answer any questions you may have about that. Staff is here. I believe it's Naomi and possibly Levon can answer some questions that came out of that. But otherwise, we're done.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Anyone have any comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Adams. I just wondering if we could table it till next time because it is so important to our next meeting. Or I know it's so late. That's my concern.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next meeting isn't until January 14th. Would that be okay? I think it's Councilmember Adams and Councilmember Keeley I want to ask as well.
Well, I guess I'm just concerned that the evictions are going to really go into action in the beginning of January. So maybe we should have just a really brief summary from staff. I'm sorry to all my colleagues for asking for this.
That's not a problem. Staff is here, and I'll make sure that Naomi kicks things off. We're prepared to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just make sure that Naomi's unmuted. Are you there?
Yeah, hello, Mayor and Council. We will give you a brief update. Actually, Levon's going to go ahead and give a general overview.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As part of the eviction prevention task force, there were multiple recommendations, overall recommendations. Two things came out as being kind of the group consensus to move forward with. The first one being coordinating communication to increase access, and then the second one being some longer term planning in an attempt to have more of a centralized repository for the information. As we've been moving forward, there has been work done on the eviction prevention, as has already been mentioned, in looking at what is out as far as funds. The city was able to get our eviction prevention funds up and running for that $2 million. We also have been working with the PIO's office and some of our the Arizona Department of Housing in being able to validate exactly what resources are available where, so that as we are circulating the flyers and updating social media, we're making sure we're pointing folks in the correct directions. We are absolutely encouraging all of our partners and the partner agencies to point folks to tempe.gov/get-help with their clients, where we have updated with all of the CDC templates, templates, letters, discussion starting templates, and suggestions for how to start the conversation with your landlord on payment plans and some of the non-financial items that you're able to do. Also reaching out to MAG and or the League of Cities to discuss some possible more regional strategies for the long term as we look at longer term eviction, targeting Spanish language television for a broader Get Help campaign message, and then of course promoting the use of the city's financial navigator, which is free and open to any Arizona resident among our summit partners.
Yeah, so that would include this brief overview. We would be happy to go into more detail and provide a Friday packet memo, if that would be the wish of council.
I'm fine with that. On more of the night out than others, and my cat is knocking. Anyway, that would be great if we could get a summary of kind of what we're going to do, and just kind of an overview would be really helpful. So thank you. I apologize for the late night.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Councilmember Cubie.
Thank you, Naomi and Levon. I really appreciate that, and I'll appreciate hearing more. It was a very important service provider discussion we had at our summit, and thank you so much, Councilmember Adams. I do want to say that Stephen Methvin stepped up to the plate, and we reached out to the Justice Court, so we know the names of people that are facing eviction on January 4th, is it, on Monday, and there's an attempt to reach out to see if any of the $2 million in aid we have can help those people that are immediately facing eviction in our city. So thank you, Stephen, for stepping up and making the connections with the justice courts to more directly connect the need to the aid. So I look forward to hearing more and following up with the service providers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, just one more thing. So
Yes.
will that be in the Friday packet tomorrow then? The information?
The information, I'm sorry, the information,
On the information that you found and what you want to distribute to us?
if possible, I would like to put it in for the next Friday so it could be more comprehensive.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. Thank you, Naomi, so much.
Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Any members of council, any other comments or questions for Naomi or Levon? All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. You hanging in with us to this late hour. So that will be in not this Friday packet, but it will be in the Friday packet next week.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, one quick other item. I apologize, guys. I got to double back. I was just talking to Councilmember Navarro about item C3, which is the ADOT Park feasibility study. So I just want to circle back for that as our last item.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be quick about this. I apologize not bringing it up when my time was, but just as we're closing out this group, I know that we have the agreement with ADOT to utilize that potentially one day if it does become a park. And I know that we established the access to the park so we can maintain it. What I'm trying to say is, as this does get closed out, we're talking to staff, trying to keep it still in the process. And I just trying to be clear, and hopefully the council understands that we see this as part of a plan down the road in the future. And as this comes up to the point where we possibly can achieve maybe the goals of ADOT Pit Park and one day become a park, we want to keep it in that line. And I believe, talking to staff, we agreed to that. But the one thing I want to just mention is if there is a time for some slight grading in that area to clean out some of the stuff that's in there, and if we are utilizing it to hold stuff in there, to hold out on that stuff so we can get it somewhat graded up. The request would be if in the near future we could look at that process of just having that cleaned out a little bit so that we can see the proposal of a park down the road, or have other people that want to engage in possibility be part of the public-private partnership for that use. So I just wanted to say that before we close out, to make sure that we're just still trying to make sure that we're keeping this alive.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Adams?
I just want to say that I'm completely supportive of moving forward with that project. I think it will be a great opportunity to provide children more opportunity to exercise and participate in sports. So thanks, Councilmember Navarro, for leading the charge on it.
Thank you so much. Anyone else on council? Any comments or questions? All right, hearing none. Sounds like you got your consensus to move forward, Councilmember Navarro. And with that, we are at item number 6 here, which is our next meeting date, which is January 14th, 2021. So this meeting is now adjourned at 11:18 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good job, everybody.
Thank you.